Venue guests clamored over the dramatic sight they were witnessing. Scarlett L. Vendimian stood shocked. Her fiancé, Prince Kyle, told her he'd say this as many times as needed. At this very moment, he was canceling his engagement with her, and instead make a new engagement with the girl by his side, Lady Terraneza Hopkins. Everyone clapped with him announcing her as his new wife-to-be. Terraneza vowed as his fiancée to deepen their love and live a long, happy married life. And he just had to add, "Oh, my Terraneza, what a cute and smart woman you are." Completely different from that emotionless woman. Referring to Scarlett, of course. In his eyes, for 17 years until now, playing pretend while being engaged to a boring woman like her was the biggest disgrace in his glorious life. Respectfully questioning his decision of annulment, Scarlett brought up how their marriage was decided before they were born. She didn't believe he alone could cancel it, to which he replied, of course he could, since it was an engagement with someone full of crimes. He's heard everything from Terraneza. Jealous upon seeing his love is turned towards her, he accused Scarlett of bullying her repeatedly around the academy. Oh my gosh, Terraneza's putting on the crocodile sniffles. However, not only did Scarlett not recall such a thing, but this was also her first time meeting Terraneza. Dun dun dun! The drama's getting juicy. Prince Kyle got angry. Now he believed Scarlett was discriminating against Terraneza just because she was in the regular class and Scarlett was in the special. He called her a bigot and said she should know some shame. He began announcing Scarlett's numerous crimes one by one. She supposedly doodled on Terraneza's notes, locked her in the toilet, and spread bad rumors. He even pushed her down the stairs. This is where Terraneza let off a nasty smirk. Scarlett was done with this. She was willing to let everyone interpret things how they liked. She accepted cancellation. Kyle found this defiance befitting her filthy nature. In dramas and theater, he knew women like her were called a villainess. And Terraneza had the audacity to utter, "Idiot." What a disgusting witch. Being called a villainess, Scarlett felt there was no need to hold back. Before leaving, she said, "May I ask for one final thing?" Kyle was about to deny her, until Terraneza gave him the, Now. She said final, after all. That should be fine. And he began to gush over his merciful woman before asking Scarlett for her wish. Scarlett stepped towards them for her final request. "May I punch that over there? They definitely weren't ready for her to come swinging." Monologuing Scarlett's thoughts. "Now, ladies and gentlemen, I, Scarlett L. Vendimian, would like to tell you why my emotions exploded recently. Terraneza and the stupid prince pissed me off. Indeed. However, to fully understand the scope of my anger, we have to go back. Since I was young, I've always loved hitting people. Back then, her older brother Leonardo questioned why she beat up the son of the Alexia family. It was only acceptable that time, since she saved a commoner. She reasoned that she didn't just punch anyone. There had to always be a reason. This time, it was for the world and the people." Leonardo sighed, remembering the scene with her beaming happily with blood all over. She was obviously enjoying herself, and hitting him with the light, "Oh my," she definitely didn't feel guilty about it. He then reminded her that after next week's soiree, she'd finally be a part of noble society, and pleaded with her to stop doing violence and to act like a lady. At the party, the prince rudely greeted her with, "So you are Scarlett." She then politely introduced herself with full name and title as the daughter of a duke, and to this he replied that she must be stupid. If he asked if she was Scarlett, her only answer should be yes. He didn't ask her to introduce herself, and declaring her his servant from now on, she was irritated. This was her first encounter with Prince Kyle von Palestin, their country's second prince and her fiancé. It was also the beginning of her hellish days. Prince Kyle subjected her to various kinds of pranks and bullying. She would ask her father if it was too much, but he'd only apologize, since this was an engagement with the royal family. She endured and endured and endured. She kept holding herself back. Then, time passed. She turned 15 years old and enrolled in the Royal Aristocratic Academy. Her peers thought she was so cool and beautiful. She got the top grade for the last magic exam. Known as the Icy Rose who excelled in pen and sword, she was the pride of the special class. Except when it came to Prince Kyle. In front of the other students, he ordered her to be his slave. But in this period, she gained a steel heart that wouldn't budge no matter what he did to her. When lunch breaks hit, he'd storm into her class, asking why she was here and not buying him lunch. She coldly replied with apologies and that she'd buy it immediately, and her friends could do nothing about his abuse. He was a prince. He even had his friends watch them in case they told any teachers. Alone, he'd scold her for getting good grades and being full of herself. He couldn't stand that she was in the special class while he was in the regular. He wasn't going to let the disrespect go on any longer. He pulled out a blade, threatening to cut her silver hair and bring it to the regular class as a trophy. This is some cartoonishly evil-ish. She asked him to stop, or she'd tell her father, but he already knew Duke Van Diemen was nothing more than his father's lapdog. Their engagement wouldn't end unless he wanted it, and she was going to live her entire life as his slave. At this point, she was about ready to punch him, until another boy said, "Could you do your lover's quarrel somewhere else? I can't even take a nap." Sitting in a tree above was the first prince, Julius von Palestine. He jumped down, taunting his brother for dropping to the regular class for doing useless things like this. Oh, I see where this is going. Kyle is the second prince with a chip on his shoulder who compares himself to his more talented older brother. Julius ignored Kyle to greet Scarlet and apologize on his brother's behalf. Scarlet replied it was fine, since this happens all the time. And man, Julius was not going to let this slide. He's heard of his brother's childish pranks and tantrums, but he didn't know Kyle was threatening her with a dagger daily. Kyle threw a fit about how it was all Scarlet's fault. She never respected him, despite being his fiancée. He tried calling Sigurd to take Julius away, but Sigurd couldn't honor that request, since Julius was also of royal blood. Kyle glared angrily at Scarlet, saying, "I'll get you for this," before running off. Afterwards, she thanked Julius for saving her. But he had to ask, who was really saved? She could tell he noticed she was about to send Kyle to the grave. We then learned he was sitting in the tree reading to avoid people flocking around him during break. In the kingdom of Palestine, there were two princes. The first prince, son of the queen, Prince Julius was originally meant to be heir. Due to his righteous personality, a part of the corrupt nobles felt he was a threat to their interests. So, the stupid second prince, Kyle, was the one they supported as the next king. Thanks to that, faction clashes occurred every day, even at the academy. He now thought spending time in the classroom after this wasn't so shabby, because looking at Scarlet, he felt he found something way more interesting than reading books. There was a brief moment of fluttering charm Scarlet felt, and then a quick coldness. At the exam grade announcement board, the students clamored over the shocking results. They couldn't believe Scarlet lost to Julius. She'd been in first place for the 3 main courses all this time, and for her, perfect scores for all courses was inconceivable. For the swordsmanship and magic exams, even if she got a score of 99, even if she defeated the instructor, they'd dock her for not liking her form, or a slight imperfection in her magic formula. She couldn't stand the fact that Julius got the scores she failed to seize. With him coming up to greet her, he'd whisper, it was surprisingly easy to get a perfect score for the top spot. Enraging her, she punched her wall, wondering if she should interpret that as a personal challenge. Whenever she was defeated, she'd return it tenfold. Re-seizing the top grade, she was sparkling. This time, Julius came by, patting her head as he told her she looked wonderful when she swished her sword after school, while no one was looking. She was getting irritated while her friends were gushing. They wanted to know if she and the first prince had a special relationship. And now there was a rumor that with him wanting to see her happy face, he supposedly lost this time on purpose. She finally understood his methods and wouldn't be baited by his provocation again. From that point on, he tried to greet her in the morning, and she'd ignore it. During break, she'd ignore it. In the evening, she'd ignore it until she finally asked why he always appeared where she was around. He answered it was just coincidence, and seeing her get angry, he chuckled. He thought it was so interesting to see the icy Rose get so riled up. Even though most considered her the emotionless type, having observed her for a while now, he could tell how she felt leaped through her face. To this, she closed her eyes, asking if he could tell what she was thinking right now. His answer? Just disappear somewhere already, you sly prince. She was in disbelief that he knew. The two talked about Prince Kyle, whom she hadn't seen lately since he'd been demoted to regular class. She remembered Kyle said he was going to get revenge, but now wondered if the reason he hadn't yet was because Julius was keeping him away. Staring at her directly, he said, "See, it's all over your face again." Touching her silver hair, he called it gorgeous. He couldn't forgive the idea his brother wanted to chop it off. He then said, "Moreover, among those I have ever laid eyes on, you are the most interesting, peculiar creature." She responded, "Excuse me?" Having apparently found her to be a rare living being for observation, he then began to pull out his peculiar creature notes with her personal page listed as a 5-star ultra rare, then asked her to be his fiancée instead, promising to treat her better. She coldly declined, and just like that, her anger and stress piled up to an unbelievable degree. She's always dreamed of punching the two princes, and now all of that pent-up rage was being unleashed with Terraneza as the trigger. She felt so much better now. Kyle started freaking out over this, but hearing he might be next, he felt back. But of course, everyone who took the prince's side made her mad too. They dared to support the ridiculous engagement cancellation and waste all of her suffering up until now. That's why she decided to glove up and punch everyone. They tried calling the guards her way, but she'd quickly chant sleep magic to knock them out. The top student at the academy in both studies and combat was the worst person to piss off. She then uppercut the man offering his daughter to whoever could defeat her. Then the man who offered his wife to defeat her. What the cuck is this? Then the next man offered a dozen of his slaves for protection. Even though slavery was illegal in this country, wow, a lot of these guys had secret slaves to offer. Scarlet saw Prince Kyle's supporters as disgusting pigs worse than vermin, who only thought of licking the sweat of others. To be able to punch these pigs with all her heart was the best feeling for her. Casting a speed-enhancing spell, she began to punch one after the other. And now one of them remembered the moniker she earned, the Mad Dog Princess, before he got his lights knocked out. Last, of course, was Prince Kyle. She asked him to escort her for the final dance, and midway through her swing, her brother told her to stop. But it was way too late. Julius thought this was pretty funny though. She was all refreshed now that you've hyped the video and subscribed to my channel, because here at My Shoujo Weekly, you already know I'm like the Library of Alexandria for Villainous anime. I've got a whole playlist you should watch. After you finish this one, of course. Alright, back to the video. After knocking out everyone's lights, Leonardo was scared to approach Scarlet. All the while, she was irritated at the sight of Julius. The prince asked what caused her to beat up everyone, and she answered that they had committed unforgivable deeds, and rather than be remorseful, they continued audacious acts. So, she had to punish them. In other words, they pissed her off, so she punched their teeth in. Julius had always wondered when she would unleash her fists, and he didn't like the fact that he wasn't there to witness the nobles getting beaten up. Leonardo feared their family name would be ruined because of Scarlet's actions. After 10 years of peace, he had no idea how to explain this to their parents. While Julius knows Scarlet wouldn't be held responsible for this, her vision grew blurry, and suddenly, she collapsed. Hearing the familiar sound of the bell of the Church of Cronoa, God of Time, Scarlet realized she had used too much of Cronoa's power. She awoke to a maid holding a knife to her chest, but Scarlet was unfazed and asked who exactly she was. Before the maid could pierce her, she punched the maid, sending her crashing into the wall. Leonardo rushed in after hearing a huge explosion, but was surprised to see Scarlet was doing fine. The maid, however, was literally halfway into the wall. Leonardo wasn't too happy. Just 3 days after waking up, and this was the first thing Scarlet did, he mentioned the doctor wasn't sure what was wrong with Scarlet, and feared she would never wake up again. He caressed her hand, calling her a big fool. Scarlet would then apologize for her reckless behavior. Her brother then asked her to promise never to hit anyone again, but that was taking it too far. Of course she wouldn't promise that. Julius then came, glad to see Scarlet finally awake. He mentioned that the royal family had finally terminated her engagement. Her father also gave his assent, and Kyle lost his royal status for causing so much trouble. Rumors had also begun spreading about the slave traders in the Second Prince's faction. With this chance, they would all eventually be caught. Scarlet wouldn't be punished because the royal family saw her as too valuable. However, she'd remain single for a while until other domestic matters were handled. On the bright side, Julius claimed she had gained something priceless in exchange. Rumors of her deeds were already spreading around the city. Everyone was talking about the champion who sent a horde of evil, filthy nobles to prison with just her fists. As she stood alone, covered in blood, beautiful and terrible, she was given the nickname, the Blood-Stained Lady. Leonardo freaked out hearing this. Just when it seemed like people had forgotten about the Mad Dog Princess, Scarlet went and got herself another frightening nickname. Julius then explained the upcoming days would be quite interesting, especially since the nobles Scarlet had exposed were important men in the national government. Most of them would have to be replaced. The most pressing matter of all was the organizer of the idiots in the Second Prince's faction, Prime Minister Godwin Benet Carmine. They needed to find a way to deal with him. The king and Prince Julius suspected someone was pulling the strings behind the Second Prince's factions, and so they decided to deal with all the rotten aristocrats at once. For this, Julius mentioned they had formed an organization known as the Crown Investigatory Office, or CIO, and Leonardo was currently the head of the organization. Seeing that her brother had been quite overwhelmed and stressed as of late, Scarlet questioned if this was because of the time he'd been spending with Julius, while the prince argued it was mostly due to all the problems she had caused. However, to Leo though, it was actually the both of them stressing him out. Julius would introduce Sigurd Forgrave, the one who exposed the Prime Minister's plots. He had been deployed by the CIO to infiltrate the Second Prince's faction. He trembled before Scarlet, apologizing for the way he had badly treated her in the past. She thought he had completely sworn fealty to Prince Kyle, and teased how his performance was quite convincing. Sigurd was riddled with guilt, begging for her forgiveness. Julius permitted her to do whatever she needed to put Sigurd's actions behind her, and stop resenting him. Of course, she was prepared to punch him mercilessly, and Sigurd, without a second thought, resigned himself to her fists. Admiring his resolve, Scarlet swung with all her might, but it was only a feint. She tapped Sigurd's cheek, and decided it was all behind them now, having recalled he had saved her on other occasions as well. Sigurd replied he was only doing his duty as a knight, and didn't feel deserving of her mercy. Scarlet was sure her friends at the academy would have heard of the incident at the ball, and would be worried. She made up her mind to explain herself to them soon. Now, she'd be able to spend as much time with them as she liked, just like she had always dreamed of. Scarlet was glad she had punched all those nobles, but she never for once thought the Prime Minister would be behind it all. She had her suspicions about the one who sent the maid to kill her this morning. She then went to the shed and noticed the uniform of the maid who was tied up there left behind. Suddenly, a beast charged at her, but she knocked it down with a fierce chop. She found its behavior unacceptable because maids of their household were to be composed, silent in step, and voiceless unless called upon. Above all, they were to meet their master's expectations. Scarlet then told the beastkin, Nanaka, that she had only come to talk, but if it preferred to fight, then she wanted it to at least take on its human form, so she could punch it properly. Nanaka then transformed into a human, revealing himself to be a femboy, and the same maid who attacked Scarlet earlier. She then noticed the slave crest on his chest. Anyone who bore the mark had no choice but to carry out the orders of their assigned masters. She offered to free the boy of his mark, and in return, he would give her information about the one who sent him. The boy told her to try her best, sounding doubtful that she would succeed. She then pinned him to the ground and cast a spell to reverse time, then explaining all the people born in this world were favored by one of many gods. Most people would go their entire lives never realizing the god who favored them, but the ones who did were allowed to manifest their god's powers. That power was also known as a blessing. Afterwards, the boy's slave mark was gone. Scarlet explained she had only restored his body to how it was before. This was the power of reversal, part of the blessings of Cronoa. It was also the reason the royal family wanted to secure her place in the kingdom. However, it had a lot of limitations and drained Scarlet's energy quickly. She would die if she overused it. Her overuse of acceleration was what caused her to pass out during the ball. Of course, the boy had to keep this power a secret or she would punish him. He then revealed it was the Prime Minister who hired him to attack her because she had attacked his son, Heine, during her violent display at the ball. However, Nanaka wasn't originally sent to kill her, but to spy on House Vendimion. Godwin had sent different spies into all kinds of noble houses to exploit their weaknesses, persuading them to partake in slave trades and accept bribes. That's how he got more people on his side. After hearing this, Scarlet made up her mind to kick the Prime Minister's butt. Nanaka warned that Godwin was always protected by guards, and advised her to wait for Julius and her brother. But Scarlet was determined to beat up Godwin before he got arrested. She believed it was ladylike to punch those who annoyed her. Nanaka then mentioned that Godwin attended slave auctions once a month, and the next one was in a week. Though he didn't know where it would be held, he could get Scarlet in contact with the slave trader. However, he wanted to go along to get revenge on Godwin, since he enslaved him. Scarlet then agreed to bring him along, and unbeknownst to them, Julius was eavesdropping on their whole conversation. 3 days later, while they passed through the slums, Scarlet showed Nanaka a mithril ore she had bought from a kid for 1 gold coin. She had never seen such a drab color. Because it was actually a regular rock, she had no idea she'd been swindled. Scarlet then asked Julius why he had joined them, and he brought up how she was looking for a slave trader connected to Godwin. But she felt he should be pursuing his own ways towards exposing Godwin. Julius added he'd be locked up in the castle after the academy to learn the proper ways a king should rule. He wanted to use this chance to see what life was like in his kingdom. If he had to rule, he wanted to do his best to create the perfect kingdom. And if Scarlet was seeking out its dark corners, it was important for him to accompany her. His real reason? He couldn't miss out on something so amusing, revealing he had overheard their conversation in the cabin, and it set his heart aflutter. Some ugly thugs then approached them, and upon seeing them, Scarlet's eyes sparkled with so much excitement. As she put on her gloves, ready for a brawl, Nanaka calmed her down, reasoning they could discuss with the thugs first. Nanaka told the thugs they were looking for a middleman named Junk, and they would pay to be brought to him. The thugs weren't cooperative. All they cared about was stealing all their money. They had heard Scarlet was swindled into buying a regular rock, so the hoodlums felt this was an easy catch. Furious, Scarlet crushed the rock in her palms. Now, she had to buy a new one. As the thugs rushed towards, she threw the rock particles at them, and quickly used her blessing to enhance her strength. Together, with her acceleration skill, she started beating up the thugs and tossing them around. After knocking out 3 of them, she felt a lot better. Taking notice of her features, one of the thugs with an eye patch realized she was Scarlet, the Lady of Beatings. Hearing the nickname, Julius couldn't help but chuckle. Scarlet knocked out the guy with an eye patch quickly, and for the last, who claimed the strong preyed on the weak, she figured she was allowed to do anything to him. After being disarmed, the guy begged for his life, but Scarlet asked if he had ever spared those who begged him in the past. If he was going to trample on others, then he needed to be prepared for the tables to turn on him. Just before she could knock out his lights, he quickly brought up Junk, the middleman, saying Junk usually hid in a bar that wasn't too far from here. Scarlet thanked him for the information, then landed the final blow. She then asked Julius what he was doing while she was fighting. He answered that he was watching closely, in case he had to intervene. However, she wouldn't have appreciated if he did that. Julius then asked if she was aware of the expression she was making. He said it was the sour expression of someone who wanted to hit more people. Scarlet doubted it, but he told her she didn't have to lie to herself. The way she was now was the most amusing thing he could imagine, and this got on her nerves. As for Junk, the prince wanted to confront him alone. Unlike Scarlet, he didn't intend to use violence. Scarlet and Nanaka waited outside the bar. Julius then returned to them, stating he had the name and location of the slave merchant. Scarlet asked how he got the information, wondering if he used violent means, but the prince only scared Junk a little by fooling him with a lie. She questioned the prince if he was aware he had talent as a con man, but Julius was disappointed to see that she underestimated him quite a bit. At the least, she was sure he lacked empathy for others. For their next step, they looked to Nanaka for ideas on how to infiltrate the slave auction. Days later, Lord Zatharin welcomed Scarlet to his office. He had heard she was looking for a rare slave. Still, he felt it was beneath her as an aristocrat to go as far as dealing with a reprobate like Junk. Scarlet claimed she had no choice, and then asked about Zatharin's relationship with Junk. However, he could hardly call it a relationship. He simply signed a contract with Junk to have him bring any valuable slaves that ended up in the slums. Scarlet would question what he meant by valuable, and he answered when it came to matters of slaves, he didn't discriminate, whether it be elves, dwarves, avians, or demons. Noticing Nanaka was a beastkin, Zatharin deemed he would fetch quite a price. Scarlet asked how he could tell Nanaka was a beastkin, and he replied that it was quite obvious from appearance. He also expected her to bring a fine specimen of hers as well. While laughing like a maniac, it irritated Scarlet so much she was ready to punch him, but Nanaka advised her not to do it. Zatharin then asked what kind of slave she was looking for, but Scarlet brought up the upcoming slave auction, letting him know that she wished to attend. He explained she would need to undergo a review where she would reveal her status and enact at least 6 slave transactions. This would likely take a year. However, time wasn't on her side, so she offered to pay as much as he wanted. Zatharin didn't want her money though, but was willing to take her under the guise as the daughter of a distant relative, only if she sold Nanaka to him. Scarlet's expression became grim, but she suddenly lit up and happily accepted his offer. With that, the plan was a success. Zatharin had done exactly as Nanaka thought he would. Yet, Nanaka was surprised that Scarlet could actually resolve some things without beating up anybody. With the auction coming up in 3 nights, Scarlet asked him if he was sure of this decision, since she wouldn't be able to guarantee his safety in the hands of Zatharin. Nanaka speculated Zatharin wouldn't bring him under any harm until he was sold off. But not only was he doing it for the mission, he also wanted to make up for trying to take Scarlet's life. He suddenly became sleepy, since his kind were nocturnal. As he dozed off, he transformed back into his animal form, and Scarlet carried him back to the inn. Coming into the room, she informed Julius that everything went well. He too was surprised that she managed to resolve the matter without punching anyone. His comment pissed her off. He wished he could have seen such a rare sight. But the prince of the kingdom couldn't simply go off buying slaves. After laying Nanaka on the couch, Scarlet decided to go get some fresh air. And what a coincidence! Julius also wanted to step out as well. As he walked behind her, she asked how long he was going to keep following her. But Julius claimed he supposedly had business down the same street. One of the street vendors called out Scarlet, asking her to try his delicious apple pie. And he'd even throw in a free apple if she bought one. Julius would go ahead to buy 2, and received 2 free apples. But Scarlet was getting really fed up with him, and soon after, every vendor would try to sell something to her, and Julius would buy. Once again, she asked Julius if he still had business down the same street, but he admitted it was all a lie, and he teased her for falling for it. Scarlet wanted nothing more than to punch his face, but she settled for the nearest wall. The moment she decided to return to the inn, the prince would stuff her mouth with a piece of apple pie, and she couldn't believe how wonderful it tasted. The flavor of apples and honey filling every corner of her mouth felt divine. Julius apologized for going a bit overboard. Still, Scarlet wasn't about to allow him to buy back her favor so easily. But after he offered her his piece of pie, she decided he was back in her good graces once more. Sitting by a bench, Scarlet noticed the prince was quite familiar with the city. He brought up how he used to slip away from the academy once in a while to look around, though she believed he was really just skipping classes. He asked her what she thought of the kingdom's prized merchant's quarter. Scarlet recalled when she used to buy lunch for Kyle here, she never had the time to look around, but now she could see it was quite a lively place, admitting she enjoyed her time here. The prince was happy to hear this. He had always thought of making her try the apple pie he gave earlier. Hearing this, Scarlet wondered if he had been meaning to show her around the merchant's quarter. She felt that if he had admitted that, she wouldn't have been so unkind. He was truly a rebel. Julius then mentioned that he hated feeling bored. At a younger age, the things that interested him were twisted and ugly. As the first prince, he was surrounded by fools who tried to garner his favor and get things from him. However, he would notice Scarlet alone when Kyle came to bully her. Julius then told her that she didn't have to suffer in silence, and she could tell his father if she was frightened. To this, Scarlet mocked the idea of her being frightened of the second prince, calling it a joke, and at that moment, Julius's eyes grew wider in amazement. Since most things in the world bored him, he wanted at least this small corner of the world he inhabited to be full of things that interested him. And right now, the most interesting thing to him was Scarlet. He suddenly kissed her cheek, causing her heart to race. Julius realized what he felt wasn't the same as the traditional romantic love. But one thing was for sure, Scarlet was dear to him, more dear than anything else in this world. By evening, she laid in her bed, wondering if this was just another way the prince was trying to tease her. The following day, she returned to Zatharin to complete their deal. However, he decided to confirm first if Nanaka was truly a beastkin. She asked if he doubted her, and Zathrin replied, it wasn't entirely new for a wicked person to dress up their slave as a rare breed to gain a higher price. So, Scarlet would order Nautica to transform into his beast form, and upon doing so, Zathrin was amazed, saying Nautica would be the crown jewel of the auction. Out of nowhere, a huge man stormed into the office, mistaking Scarlet for a slave. Zathrin referred to him as Donovan, and explained that she was simply a customer. Scarlet noticed he was half human, half magibeast, which made her wonder if he was a lycanthrope. Nautica growled aggressively at Donovan, as Zathrin pointed out he was the slave to be taken. Donovan then mentioned beastkin were known for their quick regeneration. He then put a collar on Nautica and forced him to get going, but Nautica would resist. Enraged, Donovan was about to whip him, but Scarlet quickly held the whip, letting Zathrin know that Donovan needed a bit more discipline, and if Donovan was too stupid to learn, she threatened to administer proper punishment in his stead. Hearing this, Donovan shot back, threatening to rip her apart. Zathrin then warned her not to provoke him, because Donovan was a former A-rank adventurer. She'd have to be on the same level as a knight captain to handle him. But Scarlet wasn't the least bit fazed. Donovan, as well, wasn't about to let her off easy just because she was a woman, or even a customer. He tried pulling out his whip from her grasp, but struggled with comical immenseness. Zathrin thought he was joking around, but Donovan was seriously using all his strength. Scarlet then asked if Donovan was going to be put up for auction, but he was just Zathrin's personal bodyguard and trainer for the other slaves. In that case, Scarlet wouldn't hesitate to beat him up. With a flick of her wrist, she flipped Donovan into the air and punched him so hard, he was sent flying over the horizon. She was glad to have meted out her punishment. She then took the collar off of Nanako and healed his wounds. Thereafter, she gave him a warm hug, assuring him she would be back for him soon. As for the broken window, Zathrin was too scared to take any payment from her for it. In fact, he claimed he was happy with her actions, because he'd been having a hard time disciplining Donovan, and he promised not to bring any more harm to her precious merchandise. On her way back to the inn, she recognized the carriage parked in front. Her brother stepped out, looking furious, and demanded an explanation from her as soon as they returned to the palace. Leonardo was losing it at both her and Julius for being so reckless. Even though they had gotten the location of the slave auction, Leonardo was not having it, especially from the prince. He also didn't want to see Scarlet throwing herself into danger. Despite her nicknames, he still saw her as an innocent maiden at 17. Julius then asked about his investigation, and Leo revealed Godwin was the organizer of the auction. With 2 nights remaining until the auction, Leo panicked. Meanwhile, Julius noticed Scarlet staring at him and told her he had no apple pie, but if she wanted, he was willing to send a servant. However, she got angry at him for making it seem like she was a glutton. Leo wanted Scarlet to return home before the auction, but she refused, which made him question why she was so determined. She answered since her engagement to Prince Kyle was cancelled till now, she had gone through a lot. She stopped holding back and became the Mad Dog Princess once more, beating up more men than she could count. She also met different kinds of people. Slaves forced to carry out orders, children begging in the streets, rotten nobles trying to enrich themselves, and even a golden-haired boy who loved provoking her. Since childhood, she had wondered why the good-hearted had to suffer, and the wicked prospered. Those who trampled on the weak were cunning and couldn't be punished normally, with Godwin and his cohorts being at the pinnacle of this. Even though she knew little of the world, she was certain that those self-serving, greedy nobles were the most delightful to punch. Plus, the only person allowed to punch them was the daughter of a prominent duke like herself. Hearing this broke Julius into laughter, while Leo felt anguish. Leo was particularly worried about their family's name. He also feared Godwin was connected to the Vanquish Empire. For the past 300 years, Vanquish had been having border skirmishes with Palestine. It was a land of might makes right, governed by dragon riders. Scarlet thought they had established friendly relations with them since the last peace talks. However, Leo believed the Vanquish Aerial Corps, the Red Sky Dragoons, might have recently come in contact with Godwin. In his home, Godwin met with 2 hooded dragon riders, asking them to get rid of Scarlet. As they left, Terraneza presented a flintlock before Godwin, saying it was a present from goddess Palmia. Godwin didn't understand what it could do, so she displayed its fire power by blasting a vase in the room. She wanted him to use it without mercy against those who stood in his way. Scarlet arrived at the auction house venue, thanking Zathrin for the invite. He would then give her a mask to wear, and she hoped they could make favorable purchases. Though she knew it would be for the last time. Julius had reason that if the Vanquish's Red Sky Dragoons were really involved in this, it was all the more reason to approve Scarlet's undercover presence. They could probably get about 10 of their CIO agents into the auction. Naturally, they'd be forced to surrender their weapons within the auction venue. So, the prince decided to send in skilled combatants, but only if they were armed. Even if they used magic, they would likely struggle to take Godwin into custody. But Scarlet, being their trump card, was capable even without weapons. And if she could lay out everyone behind the slave auctions, including Godwin, her new bloody nickname would likely be the kingdom's iron-fisted savior. Leo was informed that the palace knights were in place. They would enter once they got the signal from Julius. Everything was ready. All that was left was for Scarlet to hold to her word. Earlier on, he had asked her to avoid any unnecessary fights. But recalling the way she sparkled as she thanked him, Leo's stomach was churning. And now, he wished he had called the whole thing off inside the hall. Scarlet walked around as the nobles discussed the various slaves they were eager to buy. Suddenly, the lights went off, and a man bumped into her. As he apologized, Scarlet thought she recognized his voice. The spotlight then came on, and the host commenced the start of the slave auction. The audience was fired up, eager to purchase the slaves they had their eyes on. Some had even dipped into taxpayer money for this. Man, that's crazy work. With everyone being so well prepared, a lady feared she might not have enough money. But the man next to her laughed, commenting on how she had seduced Palmian priests and took them for quite a sum. The auction began with a rare, one-winged avian. As the nobles began placing their bids, Julius walked up to Scarlet to check on her. He asked if she had found Godwin, but not yet. However, she had a few ideas where he might be. The prince let her know that the palace knights were waiting on his signal, and if she didn't hurry, her targets could be taken away. Scarlet would propose a trade. She intended to properly clobber Godwin, so she asked the prince to tell the knights to hold off a while longer. Of course, nothing would delight Julius more. The whole reason he joined the undercover team was to watch her punch that fool. He asked what she would give in return for fulfilling her request, and Scarlet then vowed her unwavering loyalty to the crown and kingdom for the rest of her life. But Julius didn't want her to vow to the crown. He held her softly by the chin, asking her to swear loyalty to only him. She still saw it as the same thing, given he was next in line for the throne. But the prince couldn't wait. He wanted her to swear her loyalty now. That was his condition, and she slowly swore to him. Julius still asked if he could trust her on that, and she felt it was unfair. He had already coerced her, though he saw it as nothing new. She then pointed out that Godwin was seated above, overlooking the hall, which meant it was time for the show. A once-in-a-lifetime pummeling spectacle by Scarlet L. Vendimian. She told the prince he was free to be in the audience, but she may go off script and punch a certain golden-haired lord as well. So, he was advised to maintain caution. Now, Scarlet was about to see the one her fists had longed for, their beloved punching bag. Meanwhile, a little elven girl cried out as she was being separated from her parents. Nanika told her not to struggle since there was no point. One of the slaves there prayed to Saint Diana to save them, but another claimed the saint didn't give a damn about their prayers. Nanika then assured the elven girl that her parents would be safe. He was counting on Scarlet. Scarlet had managed to knock out the guards, and Julius praised her excellent control. But his compliments failed to please her. Ever since he beat her out of first place on their magic exam, she still hadn't gotten over that. Soon after, they came across some rugged-looking men. Scarlet happily put on her fighting gloves, ready to make a party out of beating them. She made quick work, punching them to the tune of the orchestra. She punched the last person so hard, he broke through the doors of Godwin's room, and Scarlet revealed herself to him. Heine was furious seeing her, and grew more upset when she asked about his convalescence. He then told his father that he would handle this, and began calling upon the power of lightning in the palm of his hands. But Julius decreed with his royal authority that the spell was not permitted, nullifying it. The ring he had was the royal seal, which could cancel spells cast by anyone in the kingdom. Seeing him use it, Godwin realized he was the sparkling Prince Julius. The other nobles didn't want to believe it was truly the prince because they'd be ruined, and called him an imposter. Godwin then signaled for Donovan to be brought in, and he ordered him to kill Scarlet and Julius. That's when Sigurd would show up, slicing Donovan's hands. Julius wondered where he'd gone off to all the while, but Sigurd said it was the prince who lost him to go off on his own. Scarlet also recalled Sigurd being the meat sack she bumped into earlier. Godwin then sent everyone to attack. Sigurd warned Scarlet and Julius to get away, but she dragged him back, making it clear that these meat sacks were for her, and not him. She only permitted him to fight the lycanthrope. As for the corrupt nobles, she wanted them for herself. Filled with so much joy, Scarlet swung a noble around by his feet while she laughed. The force of the swing caused a typhoon and sent all the other nobles crashing around the room. In mere moments, the venue erupted with terrified screams. Upon entering the auction house, Leo realized why they never got the signal. His sister had stooped to mass murder. However, Scarlet didn't kill anyone. She only used the back of her sword. But that didn't make sense to Leo, considering he saw her whole body as a blade. Meanwhile, Sigurd was still in a fight with Donovan. The patrons were also escaping, and Julius didn't think they could hold back the knights any longer. But Scarlet was still eager to punch Godwin. However, Julius would ask Leo to go after the minister, and he assured Scarlet that Godwin would be clobbered by her hands only. He explained to Leo that he had exchanged vows with Scarlet, so he had to honor his word, and she even confirmed swearing her life to him. Leo clearly misunderstood. He was so happy, especially since he had given up on her ever finding that kind of happiness. Scarlet didn't understand his reaction, but was happy to see her brother happy. To Julius, they were both way too clueless. The prince then gave the signal for the knights to move in. Using his clairvoyance skill, Leo scanned the auction house and found Godwin fleeing with his son. They were heading for the roof through the central stairway. But something greater would catch Leo's attention. A dragon was approaching the roof. This confirmed Godwin was working with the Red Sky Dragoons. If he escaped to Vanquish Kingdom, he'd be out of their reach. With the roof being on the 5th floor, Leo doubted they'd made it in time. Scarlet then removed her shoes, so she could give it her all. She asked her brother to look after Nautica and the others, and activating her acceleration skill, she burst through the tires. By speeding up time around her, she could move faster than a normal human, and in seconds, she arrived at the rooftop. Although it certainly took a toll on her body, she wouldn't let such finely aged meat escape her. Approaching the dragon rider, Heine demanded a common soldier like him to get down from the dragon and greet men of high station like themselves on the ground. But the rider saw them as garbage and ordered the dragon to take care of them. As the beast was about to slap them away with its tail, Scarlet would swoop in, stopping it with her bare hands. She saved Godwin, but Heine was crushed beneath her feet. Seeing how she stopped the dragon with her bare hands, the rider got down and threw off his cloak. He got on his knees and professed his love for Scarlet, asking for her hand in marriage. Even the dragon was stunned, and so was I. She refused and sent him flying with a single slap. The dragon tried to get back at her for harming its master, but she'd subdue it easily. This caused the dragon rider to fall even harder for her. He asked her to accept his courtship, but she declined once more with a punch. But that wasn't enough to stop him from complimenting her gorgeous blue eyes, like a jewelry box containing all the world's gems. She then kicked him away, and yup, he came back, staggering on his spear, begging her to come with him. Scarlet then asked if he should really be putting his attention on her or Godwin, whom he came to slay. She then referred to him as the first prince of the Vanquish Empire, Alflame Rare Vanquish. He smiled, pointing his blade as he confirmed he was here to kill Godwin and his impudent men. The minister complained, highlighting how he had given Alflame a lot of information, and the prince had promised to make him a minister in Vanquish. But given how he had sold out one kingdom already, there was no way Prince Alflame would trust him with the fate of another. Alflame threw his spear at Godwin, but Scarlet would shatter it, refusing to let another person take her meat. He then seized one of her legs, and she noticed he held his endurance in high esteem. Flame had been given the blessing, metallization, by the god of steel, Meteor. This gave him an invulnerable body that could withstand any physical attack. He could tell that she was blessed too, but claimed she couldn't defeat him with bare-fisted blows. However, Scarlet responded that she knew exactly how to defeat him. Wrapping her hands around his neck, she would smash his face against her continuously. After so many blows to the head with her knee, Alflame became dizzy and slowly fell to the ground before realizing he was suffering from a concussion. But this didn't stop him from still asking for her hand. Man, this guy is so down bad. It reminds me of this clip from Cowboy Bebop.
I love the kind of woman that will actually just kill me.
So, Scarlet used her acceleration skill to send him blasting off again. Now, she could finally have a moment with Godwin. He began begging for his life, and in the process, He apologized for using Terraneza to break up her engagement to Prince Kyle. He was only following Terraneza's plans and offered to give Scarlet information if she spared his life. According to him, Terraneza wasn't actually from this world, but was reincarnated from another by the power of a goddess. Scarlet had no idea what Godwin was talking about. She only wanted to start punching him. He offered to get her anything she desired with his authority. So, she requested a shifty-eyed, pointy-nosed, and well-padded punching bag. As Godwin realized she was talking about him, she activated her magic skill, Overclock. In the realm she created, time moved 100 times slower. Only she could move normally. She then started beating up Godwin. One punch for the kingdom's subjects he exploited, one punch for the slaves he tormented, one punch for Nanaka, who he treated like a toy, and one punch for herself, whom he tried to kill. And the last one was just because she wanted to punch his lights out. As time reverted to normal, Godwin was hit by the impact of all the punches at once. Scarlet knew her brother would be angry at her for overusing her blessing, which caused her to bleed and her beautiful silver hair to turn black. Falling backwards, Julius would catch her and heal her hands. Looking at the scene, he couldn't believe a human fought here. The others soon ran in to check on her. Scarlet assured everyone she was fine, and apologized to Nanaka for not coming to save him herself, but he was just glad that she was safe. Suddenly, Godwin appeared in front of them and shot Scarlet, but Julius would shield her with his body. Enraged, she attacked him, but he laughed at her, saying her punches didn't affect him because of the magic pendant he wore. So she ripped it off. It was the Holy Maiden's pendant, which held the power of Goddess Palmia, and he demanded it back, so Scarlet fed it back to him with her fists. She couldn't stand the fact of losing Julius to a lowlife like him, and she kicked him off the roof. With this, she had avenged the prince, and prayed he would watch over them from the heavens, only to find out he wasn't even dead, thanks to Leo's healing magic. Julius asked Scarlet if she was disappointed to see him still alive, and she smiled, letting him know she was glad to see him well. Afterwards, all the corrupt nobles were arrested, and the slaves were freed. Scarlet felt so much better after getting what she was after. Alflame's comrade would later find him stuck in a tree, and kick it to get him down. He believed Alflame's body was too sturdy to take any damage from a falling tree, but Alflame explained he was only able to survive after using up all his blessings. As they rode the dragon back, he told his comrade he couldn't wait to meet Scarlet again. News of Godwin's arrest spread throughout town, and there were those who believed it was all thanks to Scarlet. Now, they were calling her the kingdom's iron-fisted savior. Some girls were gushing, thinking maybe Scarlet's favorite pet was an elegant white cat or a wise dog. However, Scarlet had trained Rex, the dragon, for herself, making Nanaka jealous. Cervantes approached her, talking about the item she had requested him to develop. He had asked the traders to have them stock her new line of Godwin punching bags, but didn't know if they would sell well. Scarlet was certain they would, since they seemed to be a big hit, with Julius at least. He then pointed out Nanaka, who had been staring and desiring affection from her. So, Scarlet opened her arms to him, and he whooped to snuggle her warmly. In an underground prison, Terraneza was walking through when the guards told her visitors weren't allowed. She used magic to brainwash them into allowing her to pass. What were her goals? She was after a happy ending, to fall madly in love with a handsome prince, overcome countless trials to be with him, and become a princess beloved by all. Upon seeing her, Godwin offered to gladly serve Goddess Palmia if she would let him out. She replied she was grateful that he suppressed Dianism to make Palminianism the state religion. So, she offered him the blessing of the goddess by tampering with his mind and leaving him poison to kill himself with. After bidding him goodbye, her next objective was to tear down the hateful villainess Scarlet L. Vendimion from her glorious stage. News of Godwin's death reached Julius. He doubted the Prime Minister was the type to off himself. Leo found it suspicious, and also concerning that Terraneza was unaccounted for. Nanaka then entered, bringing an item Leo had requested. On the other hand, Julius wondered just who Terraneza was. He also noticed some troublesome people were getting involved with the religion of Palmianism. There were two major religious organizations in the kingdom. One had been gaining believers among people in power in recent years. That was Palmianism. It was a religion that worshipped Palmia, the goddess of beauty and love, and was led by a Novurish merchant who lacked any hint of gravity. Nanaka could see how it had ties to Godwin. This religion was the kind of thing corrupt nobles would be all over. The other religion that existed since the kingdom's founding was Dianism. It venerates Saint Diana, a girl with the power of exorcism. It wasn't the state religion, but more people felt it was more deserving of the title. With the Dianism ceremony coming up soon, Julius was counting on Leo to handle it. He was sure this year's Holy Land pilgrimage would be anything but simple. It may even put a severe burden on Scarlet as well. Leo confirmed his sister was doing much better. Yesterday, she even decided to go hunt food for her dragon herself. Julius thought of her as a really interesting woman. With Scarlet by his side, he'd never get bored. He considered really asking for her hand in marriage, but Leo believed they had already sworn their lives to each other. Julius couldn't wait until he found out the truth. For now, he decided to go see his beloved. Several days later, Scarlet was on her way home after a nice dragon ride. Her friends, Rosalia Ray Madeline and Envy Mel Champagne, had come to see her. Upon seeing the dragon, they quickly cast their magic to stop it. Later, they'd have tea with Scarlet and explain they mistook Rex for an enemy. After all, dragons were mounts used by a hostile kingdom. Scarlet was glad to see her friends hadn't changed. In the month she had been away, Envy held absolute power over the academy dorm. Rosa then called out her lie, explaining that Envy had just been bored without her rival there. She exposed how Envy had bought up all the healing potions around town, but before saying more, Envy threatened to seal her mouth with ice magic. Since Scarlet was her roommate, Envy was hoping she'd recover quickly and return to tidy up the dorm. Rosa teased about how she'd been crying about missing Scarlet. However, Envy denied it, saying she wanted to graduate fast and marry a fine gentleman. Scarlet had heard rumors of Envy having many suitors, but Envy found them all unserious. She wanted the kind of person who would risk their life for her. Scarlet's expression then became grim as she thought back to when Julius had shielded her. Rosa then asked about her intentions for marriage. Nautica would then enter the room, letting her know Julius had come to visit. He wanted to check up on her recovery, and upon seeing the prince, Rosa and Envy were flustered. On the other hand, Scarlet told him he was imposing on her time with her friends. Of course, they didn't feel the same. They were honored to see him outside of school. Julius asked to borrow Scarlet for a bit, which seemed to annoy her. Holding her hand with a sparkly gaze, he said he wanted to talk about something privately. Rosa and Envy squealed at how dashing he was, agreeing to allow him to borrow Scarlet as long as he wanted. Scarlet felt betrayed. While they took a walk, Prince Julius told her about Godwin's death. He had investigated Terraneza in accordance with her report, but Kyle knew nothing about her. He had no other leads, and Terraneza's current whereabouts were unknown. Scarlet understood this wasn't something they could discuss in front of her friends. Julius asked if she was hoping to hear something else, but she couldn't imagine anything. Then asked if there was something else he wanted to say. He brought up how her hair hadn't fully gone back to normal. She considered visiting a hot spring. It was said that the waters could ease physical and mental harm caused by blessings. The prince agreed, considering she was indispensable to the kingdom. He didn't want to lose her over something so trivial. She felt the same, and asked him to never do something as foolish as risking his life to save her. Naturally, she was happy to be considered important by the royal family. She realized that the blessing of the god of time, Cronoa, was important. Julius would interrupt her, asking if he could pick the roses in the garden. He reminded her of the time they went shopping in the merchant's district in Grand Hilda. Long ago, his parents would disguise themselves as commoners to enjoy time together there. Scarlet was surprised, commenting that they had such an austere air about them. Julius's father showered his wife with gifts and marriage proposals as many times as there were stars in the sky. The wife found it exhausting until he gave her a particular gift. Not a shining crown of gold and jewels, but one made by him with his own hands and all his love. Julius then made a crown of roses for Scarlet, placing it on her head. He said to her, "Scarlet, I need you." When she was by his side, the whole world sparkled in dazzling color. A world where everything once seemed gray and boring. She had given it color with a veil of fresh blood. Holding her face gently, he let her know she had stolen his heart. The prince asked if she would remain with him always. It was a sweet moment, until he referred to her as his most beloved toy. Scarlet suddenly went pale, asking if love was the feeling he put into the rose crown. And it was, but more like love for his exceptionally amusing toy. What a way to ruin the moment. Julius didn't see her as an object of romantic love, and this made Scarlet furious. He was so used to seeing her punch people through walls and beat prime ministers half to death, he nearly forgot she was human. Hearing this, she put on her gloves, requesting to clobber the prince before her. Staring into the night, Scarlet thought about Terraneza's disappearance and the Palmian scheming, fearing something worse was about to happen. She had gotten a letter from St. Diana, inviting her to the cathedral. No matter what else happened, Scarlet swore to protect her. The following day, she asked her brother for permission to go on a hot springs tour. Leo, oozing with anger, assumed this was just a pretense to punch someone. She questioned his lack of trust in her, and he called her out for her audacity, especially since she lied to him about her vow with Julius. For a moment, Leo thought his sister had found marital bliss. But it wasn't entirely a lie, considering they did make a vow. While serving tea, Nanaka asked if she was trying to punch the saint. That's when Leo recalled that Scarlet always took a trip this time of year, and the hot springs route was the same as the Holy Land pilgrimage. However, Scarlet reminded her that the saint was beloved by the people and indispensable to the kingdom. She would never dream of punching such an honored personage. Leo then approved her hot springs tour, and at that very moment, she left. Outside, she was deadpan, meeting Julius, who teased her for taking longer than expected. On the carriage ride, he laughed when he heard Leo thought Scarlet was going to punch the saint. Considering her brother was the head of the CIO, she didn't see why the prince was hiding the fact that she was accompanying him on the Holy Land pilgrimage. But Julius insisted on keeping it a secret because he was looking forward to Leo's reaction when he found out. The prince then brought up how the neighboring realms have been acting suspiciously since the Godwin incident. Even though they dealt with corrupt nobles, the court hadn't yet stabilized. There was a chance there were spies in their midst as well. This was why he wanted these things to be secret from Leo. Holding Scarlet's face, he turned her attention to the wall of impurity surrounding the religious quarters, from which the Holy Land pilgrimage would depart. Scarlet knew it was the headquarters for both Palmeanism and Dianism, but it was still quite grandiose. According to Julius, the Palmean Pope said it was necessary to protect the religious quarter from the filth of the worldly realm, but he believed it was most likely there to obscure the Pope's corruption. Palmeanism's current head was Pope Sargon. Those who've known him since his days as a corrupt merchant called him the scheming social climber. Hearing this, Scarlet sparkled with excitement. It was obvious she wanted to punch him. Suddenly, the carriage stopped because the gate had been closed on them. The driver asked the guards why they had done this. They responded, telling him that Pope Sargon had issued strict orders that none may pass without approval from His Majesty. Julius knew this was all a ploy to stop the pilgrimage. He stepped out of the carriage, explaining to the guards that the king was currently attending a conference with other realms of the land. This all sounded like an act of childish spite against him. Angered by his words, a man came out, stating that he wouldn't tolerate the way Julius spoke of their Holy Father, asking him to cease the slander at once. He was Jarmov the Ogre, Inquisitor of Palmeanism. Seeing him, Scarlet thought about how satisfying it would be to punch him. Jarmov stated the duty of an Inquisitor was to expel the heretics who meant harm to Palmeanism, and he claimed this was done with the approval of their supreme goddess, Palmea. Julius doubted the king would approve of such misconduct. Then, he asked if it was the Pope who approved their organization. Jarmov confirmed this, saying Inquisitors were the Pope's trusted retainers. In other words, apostles of their goddess. Displaying his mace, he would use it to deliver punishment unto the heretics. Unknown to him, Julius was using a magic item to record everything he said. Afterwards, he allowed Scarlet to do as she pleased. Wearing her gloves, she decided to start by opening the gate. Jarmov boasted that there was no battering ram nor spell that could put a scratch on the gate. And that's when Scarlet would unleash her magic and simply push the gate, completely destroying it. The guards called her a monster, and Jarmov finally realized who she was. As they heard her name, the guards all ran for their lives. However, Jarmov decided to face her. She borrowed a spear from one of the guards, using it to deflect his attack, but she'd realized he took no damage. It was all thanks to a similar pendant Godwin had used when fighting her. In order to end this quickly, she dashed forward and landed a devastating uppercut that sent Jarmov flying beyond the horizon. It's a saying that punching could solve seemingly impossible dilemmas, though it was obviously only Scarlet who reasoned this way. Afterwards, the Knights of the Holy Order of Diana approached them. Scarlet was glad to see Sir Perigus. Likewise, he was happy to see her safe. He apologized for their late arrival, explaining that they were dealing with scattered riots by what they believed to be worshippers of Palmea. Julius suspected there might be something else they were really after. One of the knights joined up with him, and Perigus was furious, asking where he'd been since. The man told him to chill out, and quickly turned his attention to Scarlet, calling her a hot babe. Julius didn't appreciate his bad manners, and as the guy addressed the prince casually, Perigus would put him in a chokehold. Thereafter, he introduced himself as the head knight of the Holy Order, Dios Westwood. Scarlet could tell that Julius had a hard time dealing with freewheeling types like Dios. The head knight would take Scarlet's hand, asking her to become his girlfriend. At this point, Perigus was left dumbfounded. Dios was the son of elvish royalty, which made him a half-elf. Scarlet found him interesting, but wasn't pleased with his disregard for standard social mores. As she was about to flick him away, Julius grabbed his hand, asking Dios to be more respectful. As Dios realized what this was, Julius asked the head knight to leave Scarlet alone, but Dios didn't like taking orders. However, his comrades lashed out at him for his behavior and then dragged him off. Paragist apologized on Dios' behalf, letting them know he had just joined 1 year ago. Still, he was a talented fighter. Scarlet thought the same, recalling that Dios had noticed when she was about to hit him. She then asked Julius to release her hand, leaving him a bit embarrassed for acting without thinking. Scarlet asked what Dio meant by what this is, but the prince ignored the question, leaving her confused. Soon after, they'd meet Saint Diana. Julius urged that they discuss the pilgrimage ceremony immediately. To preserve the confidential nature of their discussion, he requested a room for the select few of them. Then, they went into a private room, and the prince felt it would have been better with a chaperone. As the door sprang open, Saint Diana rushed to Scarlet, hugging her. She was pretty emotional seeing her. Julius pulled her away, insisting Diana should have greeted him first, but she immediately demanded to be let go. When he asked if they'd need a chaperone, Diana refused because it would reduce the time she could be using to love on Scarlet. The Holy Land pilgrimage was a tradition that began 300 years ago. The kingdom of Palestine was under threat from monsters unleashed by the Demon King, who ruled over the demon continent. Little by little, the monsters encroached upon the land, until one day, in a village near the border, a girl appeared with the power of exorcism. Wiping out the monsters, the girl installed holy gems of purification in villages on the border in the 4 cardinal directions and established a barrier. The barrier ended the threat of the monster invasion into Palestine. Unfortunately, the holy gems and the barrier gradually lost effectiveness after the girl died. As the people began to lose hope, a new savior appeared. Her name was Diana, and it was the same name as the first girl who set up the first barrier. She purified the holy gems, restored the barrier, and saved the kingdom from the monster threats. The king then built a cathedral to honor the 2 girls with divine power and made them an object of faith. Since then, anytime the barrier has seemed on the brink of failing, a girl with the power of exorcism has appeared to serve as the symbol of faith, Saint Diana. Looking at the current Diana, Julius felt the past ones had to be rolling in their graves right now. Diana didn't appreciate him looking down on her, especially since she was a simple villager until she was 7. The prince then explained the purpose of the holy pilgrimage was to purify the holy gems and revitalize the barrier. He wanted Diana to take it more seriously, since they would be leaving in a few days to perform the rites. Diana didn't like the fact that she'd stand throughout the whole parade, but it was necessary for believers to see their saint was alive and well. It also helped to keep the Palmians in check. Julius pointed out how she had already lost her powers as a saint, telling her to at least fulfill her role as a figurehead. Scarlet quickly called him to order. Diana didn't mind, but then she left, hoping to see Scarlet later since they were staying over. Scarlet advised Julius to be kinder to Diana. He did a lot of things well, but he couldn't sense the inner workings of a woman's heart. Or perhaps it was a reflection of the pilgrimage's importance. At night, she told Diana stories of the way she punched some nobles. The saint hoped to become like Scarlet someday, so beautiful, strong, and independent of any man. Diana didn't favor young gentlemen. She found them filthy with coarse hair and bulging muscles. Plus, they always bossed her around. She admitted Julius was good looking with a good build, but he was still a jerk in her eyes. Hearing that he treated Scarlet the same way, Diana wanted to punch his face the next time she saw him. She wished there was a silver-haired, blue-eyed, charming prince on a white steed out there who would sweep her away. But Scarlet was completely oblivious to what the saint was getting at. Since it was Diana's bedtime, Scarlet decided to leave, but the saint wanted to talk with her and asked her to stay for the night. With Scarlet refusing, Diana decided to ask for another favor. She was named Diana after the saint, but a lot of other girls had the same name as well, which was why she wanted a different name. So, her father named her Sonia in private. Scarlet figured out what she wanted and wished her a good night, referring to her as Saint Sonia. On her way back to her room, Scarlet wondered what to do about Diana losing her powers. She hoped the departure ceremony would go smoothly. On the day of the pilgrimage, thousands of believers gathered in the streets as the parade passed. As Diana lifted the purifying chalice, the people begged to be blessed by her. They all praised her glory. Scarlet and Julius watched from a distance, acknowledging the parade was a success. At that moment, a loud bang went off, causing the march to stop. As the whole crowd was driven into a panic, the knights tried to calm them down. Scarlet sensed the noise coming from the Palmian Cathedral. Using her acceleration magic, she dashed through the rooftops until she came across a statue of Palmia. She would crush it, collecting the polearm, and now was ready to start her own festival of blood. Scarlet assumed the terrorists were hiding in the church. Using her acceleration magic, she enchanted the spear in her hand and threw it at the building, leaving impact with destructive force. As the men there were trying to figure out who did this, she revealed herself to them. At first, it didn't make sense to them until their brains started to comprehend that she had just said she was the one that threw it. Scarlet noticed they were all unharmed despite the explosion. One of the men quickly recognized who she was, referring to her as the silver-haired devil. However, they were confident in their job to destroy evil incarnate, and she was the perfect example. Then, they called on Katarl the Wise to deliver judgment on her. Seeing the head of their goddess statue, Katarl's glasses shattered in disbelief. He also realized the spear from earlier was from the statue. Filled with rage, he summoned 9 bats to his side. But before he could attack, Scarlet smashed his face with the head of the statue. She swiped his protective amulet off, as Katarl wept while confessing that they were tasked with stopping the Dianan festival. They'd even spent long nights working out a way to foil it. She, of course, felt no sympathy, quickly knocking out the Inquisitor. But the others still rallied themselves, believing this was all a test of their faith. Scarlet questioned if they realized the state their ridiculous mission had put the Central Plaza in, but they didn't care. One of them dived at her, and she punched him right in the gut. Yet, it wasn't enough to scare the others from trying to attack as well. So, Scarlet decided to cure their stupidity with a pain that was equal to death. After beating up everyone, she met with the guards outside, letting them know about the terrorists inside and left them to deal with it. Returning to the streets, she saw the Crown's healers helping all the injured people. She figured Julius must have sent them. As Diana called out to her, the podium suddenly cracked, causing Diana to fall. That's when Leo would arrive on a white horse, saving her. Saint Diana was flush, seeing his handsome face up close. Sigurd would report to Julius, informing him that things in town had died down, and the Holy Land pilgrimage departed safely. He added that the Palmians wouldn't be able to interfere once the pilgrims were out of the city, but the prince doubted that. Julius explained that only members of the pilgrimage would have known when he and Scarlet would arrive at the religious quarter. Yet, the Palmians had a trap ready for them. He then ordered Sigurd to infiltrate the Palmians and learn what they were after, suspecting they may have a spy amongst the pilgrimage's retinue. He didn't want to believe a traitor was in their midst, but precaution was needed. Later, Leo asked Scarlet why she was going on the pilgrimage, to which she responded she was just in the capital at the time and happened to witness the Palmians' wrongdoing. So, she called off her hot spring tour and came along in the interest of the greater good. Obviously, Leo wasn't going to believe that. He brought up how the Palmians mentioned not wanting to be killed by the silver-haired devil, and Scarlet feigned ignorance, even though silver hair was quite rare in these lands. She tried changing the subject, asking her brother if he wanted a cookie. Regardless, he asked if she was at the center of these incidents. Scarlet told him not to worry, because she was simply called to assist with the pilgrimage. She claimed the assistance was something only she could provide, and then he realized it had to do with her blessings. Since she had sworn to silence, it couldn't be helped. The Palmians' actions had grown more extreme, but still, Leo warned her that no matter how powerful her blessing was, there were things she couldn't do on her own. He told her to ask him, her big brother, for help before putting herself at risk. By nightfall, they set up a camp to rest. 2 of Diana's attendants approached Scarlet, letting her know that Diana had been acting strangely since the incident yesterday. However, they didn't think it was because the palanquin she was riding had tipped over. Peeking into the tent, they saw Diana blushing and rolling all over her bed. As Scarlet went in, the saint screamed and rolled around even more. So, Scarlet wrapped her with a blanket, trying to get her to calm down. But Diana couldn't, because looking at Scarlet reminded her of her Prince Charming on his white steed, and it made her heart race. She would confess that she fell in love with Leo at first sight, and now thinking of him made her restless. Scarlet commended her for having great taste, adding that her brother was the most wonderful man in the world. Diana wanted to get to know Leo better, but had never felt this way before and didn't know what to do, and Scarlet told her not to worry because she had a great idea. 1 week after leaving the capital, they arrived in Memphis, a city on Palestine's eastern border. The city played host to the Eastern Barrier and was known as the first stop on the Holy Land pilgrimage. It was home to many hot springs with restorative properties. So many adventurers came to enjoy their effects. In the hot spring, Scarlet and Diana reviewed their plan, though Diana was a bit nervous about inviting Leo out for a nighttime date. But Scarlet would handle it. She told the saint not to wear her usual hair ornaments and let it fall more naturally for a more composed aura. Then, she had Diana put on a traditional costume of Memphis to make her look like a common girl. This was a plan to show a new side of the saint. Scarlet believed that revealing an unexpected aspect of one's personality would catch a man's interest, and added it was a surefire winner for a maiden in love. Despite feeling a bit embarrassed, Diana was pumped to give it her all. Noticing Nanika outside, Scarlet figured her brother had asked him to watch over her. While the two ladies were petting him, she asked if he enjoyed the hot water, but Nautica seemed to prefer cold water and wasn't interested in Scarlet giving him a hot bath. He then told them to invite Leo out before he went to bed. Afterwards, Diana asked Leo if he would like to tour the city with her. He recalled Scarlet telling him to accept Diana's offer earlier, and so he did. Scarlet, who was spying on them, decided to enjoy the nightlife of the city as well. Unexpectedly, Julius met with Scarlet while she was enjoying herself. She asked what he was doing here, and he answered he wanted to enjoy the nightlife with his precious plaything. Scarlet would then state she was simply exploring the city with a lofty purpose in mind. She claimed to be monitoring the local adventurers, which made the prince question what it was about them that caught her interest. She then told him that Donovan was originally an adventurer, and hearing this, he let her know that not all adventurers were villainous, and he doubted she'd meet a brute deserving of her fists so fortuitously. Some deserving brutish adventurers were breaking a vendor's pots because they had lost a bet. Julius then confirmed they'd definitely be deserving of her fists. He then paid the man for all his broken merchandise in exchange for letting them do whatever they wanted to the adventurers. With that settled, Scarlet dashed in, knocking out the first guy. Their leader asked if she knew they were the Golden Heifer before picking a fight with them, but that didn't matter to her. She was just ready to punch all of them. At the same time, Leo felt a cold chill run down his spine, as if he was sensing his sister's urges to beat people up. Diana's attention was then caught by a game where you had to scoop up some goldfish, so she gave it a try, but wasn't really that good at it. Staring at her, Leo felt like he was looking at his sister. Then he gave Diana a hand, teaching her how to scoop up the fish. Surprisingly, she didn't take the fish home, feeling it would miss its friends. After that, they both played some other games and enjoyed different snacks. Diana came across a cat ear headband and was eager to buy it. The vendor offered to give them a discount if they bought two. Leo wasn't interested, but Diana wanted to match him, unable to resist her cute eyes. He bought them and became a cat boy. She never knew matching accessories with someone could make her so happy. When she nearly bumped into someone, Leo quickly pulled her close, whispering to her to not get too far away from him. Diana went flush. She was glad he was so nice, but felt like he was basically babysitting her. She asked him if she looked like that much of a child, and Leo immediately apologized, explaining that she reminded him of when Scarlet was a child. Diana thought that was impossible because Scarlet was always so poised, elegant, beautiful, and strong. Compared to Scarlet, she saw herself as a clumsy tomboy who always needed other people to protect her. Leo would cheer her up, saying she had done a brilliant job of fulfilling her role. Not everyone could do what she could, and she was an indispensable asset to the kingdom. He noticed some commotion going on and already had a bad feeling about it. One of the knights informed him of what was happening, so he ordered the knight to take Diana back to the inn, while he went to see what his sister had gotten herself into. As he ran off, Diana thought to herself that she had no power, wishing she could be like Scarlet. While the knights patrolled the area, someone offered them some food. Dios was happy to have it, but Paragus would snatch it away, reminding him they were on duty. Dios would then pretend to go check the stalls ahead, while secretly reading a piece of paper. Over in the Vanquish Empire, Alflame was approached by the Palmian Inquisitor, Michelin the strategist, who requested his aid, and that of the Red Sky Dragoons. Later on, Pope Sargon received word that the pilgrimage had reached Memphis. The other followers of Palmyra clamored, fearing this would increase the unifying power of Dianism. Sargon told them there was no need to panic though, because there was a special spy amongst the followers of Diana. Side note, doesn't this guy look extremely evil for a pope? Unknown to him, Sigurd had infiltrated as a knight, listening to everything. On the way to the holy gem of Memphis, Diana complained about it being so far up the mountain. She was exhausted. Leo would take her hand, asking if she wanted to rest. Her face was fully red as she insisted that she could keep going. At the same time, Paragus reprimanded his men because their pace was slow, and they were all looking very exhausted. He apologized to Scarlet for their unbecoming display, but she understood. Despite being clad in heavy armor, they'd been keeping an eye on their surroundings all this time. Her words moved them, boosting their morale in the process. Julius commented on the way she got men under her thumb by playing the innocent maiden. He thought she was really coming into her own as a villainess. She replied that she wouldn't always remain the pure and charming Scarlet he knew. While they teased each other, she referred to him as golden-haired lord. She had heard from Leo that all the ladies at the ball called him that. Dios would interrupt them, mentioning how pleased Scarlet looked to be chatting with the prince. It was like there was an extra spring in her step. She then brought up how he seemed to have more stamina than she anticipated. So Dio boasted about how elves were used to running around mountains and forests. However, she only seemed mildly impressed. Her smile was so nice, he couldn't seem to resist. He asked Scarlet to give him a chance, saying he would show her how cool he could be. He was pretty sure he could win her heart. But as soon as a bug appeared flying around his face, Scarlet curled her fists to punch him, so he quickly jumped back. But she chanted a wind spell instead, blowing him away, telling him to start over again from birth. Afterwards, they set up camp when they reached the Holy Gem, and Leo was surprised to see so much corruption in just a year's time. Seeing his sister head towards Diana's tent, he let her know it was for the saint, but Scarlet told him it was alright because she too was a saint. But he didn't seem to buy that. Then, one of the attendants came bringing a change of clothes for her. Leo lost his mind, believing his sister had gotten mixed up in some nonsense again. Before she could enter the tent, he'd stopped her and demanded an explanation. Julius, who was enjoying the whole drama, then told her to let Leo know the truth, and Scarlet revealed that Dianism didn't have just one saint. Both she and Diana were saints, but the public only knew of the existence of one. However, since the third generation, the protectors of Palestine have been a two-person team. The saints' blessings come from Cronoa. One removes impurities from the Holy Gem, and the other reestablishes the barrier. With Diana currently unable to reestablish the barrier, the Holy Gem required more purification than it did in a typical year. So, Scarlet would use Cronoa's blessing to wind back time, remove the impurity, and extend the barrier's life. And with that, she'd begin the rite of purification. Diana marveled at Scarlet's amazing power. On the other hand, Dios felt it was quite flashy, and Paragus would explain that the costume protected her from the corrupted Holy Gem. Cronoa's blessings were all precious, but the power to reverse time was especially rare and important. Julius told Leo the royal family kept Scarlet's image as a saint hidden, so that the surrounding realms wouldn't learn of it. Leo then realized why his mad dog noblewoman's sister was betrothed to Kyle, and why Julius sought to maintain a relationship with her. The nation needed her power. When the cleansing was done, Diana praised Scarlet and offered to help her change. Scarlet noticed she seemed upset, and Diana admitted feeling terrible because she hadn't done anything useful on this year's pilgrimage. To this, Scarlet swore to Diana she would help her recover her power. And in this brief moment, Diana would notice Dios was keeping an eye on them. That night, Julius received a report from Sigurd, informing the prince that they were compromised, but he didn't know who the traitor was, and there could be more than one. On the way to the next gem's location, Leo called Julius's attention as he was still pondering the report he received. The prince commented on the cold weather, and had forgotten that Scarlet disliked the cold. She didn't think it was very fun hitting people when she couldn't feel her hands. He asked her to bear with it until they got to the Lord's Manor. Julius was sure they'd get a flashing and overbearing welcome, like they did every year. However, as soon as they got into town, the townspeople all shut their doors and windows, hiding in their homes. Julius asked Count Padrak what the meaning of this was, and the Count claimed he'd been tricked by Diana, who was pretending to be a saint. He believed the pilgrimage was just a ruse to extort money from cities all over the kingdom. Leo told Padrak that the money he was talking about was collected from the citizens to maintain the state, so it didn't belong to him. Leo threatened what would happen if the Count held up the rite of purification, that it would destroy the kingdom, but Padrak let him know that they now had a true goddess who would protect them for free. As the followers of Palmia marched out, he revealed the saint of Palmianism, Terraneza Hopkins. Scarlet hadn't seen Terraneza since punching her lights out at Prince Kyle's ball. The man beside Terraneza would say he hadn't forgotten the pain and humiliation Scarlet inflicted on them that day, but she had no idea who he even was. Julius explained that he was Sargon's son, but it was natural she wouldn't remember him, since he didn't leave much of an impression. Terraneza was tired of all this, so she waved her fan, blowing out a pink mist that hypnotized her followers, and they flocked around her. This was the power of her charm blessing. Of course, this was what she also used to manipulate Prince Kyle. Scarlet knew Kyle was always an idiot, but thought it seemed a bit too much for him to break his engagement in a public setting. This charm explained it. Terraneza teased Scarlet for beating up Kyle so badly, saying, "Don't tell me you really loved him," and then apologized for stealing him. She let out an evil laugh, telling Scarlet that it served her right, and threatened to make everyone here her loyal follower. However, Terraneza's blessing didn't work on women, so Scarlet would glove up. Whenever she looked at Terraneza's face and heard her voice, it truly made her heart pound. After all, the thought of unloading her punches on Terraneza's face drove her to the peak of excitement. Terraneza immediately commanded her followers to kill Scarlet, and before the Mad Dog Princess could chant a spell, someone immediately silenced it. Then, the enemies conjured chains, binding Scarlet in place. As someone who fights barehanded, being restrained in combat was Scarlet's greatest fear, but she was already prepared for this. She instantly shattered the chains, thanks to her red crystal earrings, which nullified spells that restrained her. Being freed, she started beating up the enemies while slowly getting closer to Terraneza. One of the Inquisitors, Isabella, the disciplinarian, tried to stand in Scarlet's way with a flurry of whips, but she was easily knocked out with a single kick. Then, Scarlet pinned Terraneza down and was ready to give her a proper beating, but she'd be shocked when her fists were stopped by one of Diana's spells. Dios took Saint Diana hostage, revealing he was one of Palmia's spies and also an Inquisitor. He offered a trade for Terraneza or he killed Diana. Leo quickly agreed to the trade in order to save her, and with that, Dios then fled with Terraneza using a whirlwind spell. After confirming that Diana was safe, Scarlet passed out in Julius's arms. He promised to handle things from here, but she would ask him to save the finishing blow for her. When she next opened her eyes, Scarlet saw herself before the god of time, Cronoa. When he gave her his blessing, she was still in the womb, so it was natural that she wouldn't remember him. She thanked him, and he noticed she was more ladylike than he imagined. Whenever he peered down below, she seemed to always be causing trouble. Then, he requested her to recover Saint Diana's blessing, which was stolen by goddess Palmia and her priestess. Scarlet asked if Palmia was involved with Diana losing her blessing a year ago. That's when Cronoa revealed that it all happened because Palmia had fallen in love with him. She was a very jealous goddess and didn't like the fact that he gave his blessings to human. With him blessing Scarlet and Diana, Palmia's first move was to take Diana's power, but the gods were forbidden from interfering with the mortal realm directly. So, Palmia used a pawn, which was none other than Terraneza. She created a being not just to wield her blessings, but to manifest her divine power directly. First, she used a part of her body to create a vessel, but even a god couldn't create a soul. Therefore, she had to take a soul from the modern world to dwell in it. Okay, I haven't seen lightning smite from God-kun before. Anyway, her real name was Teresa Himamia, and she acted as a proxy for goddess Palmia. The goddess used her to target Diana and Scarlet, and attempted to destroy the kingdom of Palestine, which received their protection. So, Cronoa entrusted the time god's pocket watch to Scarlet. With this, she needed to hold it before the priestess of Palmia, and it would allow her to retrieve Diana's power. Lastly, he enhanced Scarlet's blessing as much as he could. Cronoa would summon some punching bags for Scarlet to test out her new enhanced powers. And unleashing her might, she couldn't wait to hit some real meat with her fists. 7 years ago, in a small village, Diana had a fight with her friend, Mary, and they decided they were done with each other. At night, Diana's mother read her a book about the saint. She told Diana to become like the saint, a kind person who protected those who mattered to her. But Diana doubted she could because she just had a fight with her friend. Eventually, she fell asleep and saw herself before a maiden who passed the saint's power to her. From this point forward, this young girl would become Saint Diana. The following morning, Diana discovered she could use magic. Filled with excitement, she went to tell everyone outside. They doubted her at first, until Diana conjured the saint's barrier, and that was how the life of an ordinary girl born in a small village in Palestine was turned upside down. A lot of people would gather in front of Diana's home, praying to and worshipping her. Seeing Mary again, Diana rushed to her, apologizing for before and asking to make up. But Mary felt she was unworthy. No one was treating Diana like a regular girl anymore. Members of the Dianan clergy then came to take her with them. As the people bid Saint Diana farewell, she regretted ever telling them she had become the saint. On the carriage ride, one of the clergy women told Diana that the previous saint had passed away, and now it was her duty to protect the kingdom. Diana realized nobody wanted the plain old her again. Arriving at the cathedral, she'd meet Scarlet for the first time. They'd work together to purify the holy gems and protect the kingdom. One night, she asked Scarlet how she was so perfect. She felt she was just a worthless village girl without her saint powers. Scarlet told Diana that when others saw her acting cheerful and bright, it made them smile. That wasn't something just anyone could do, and it wasn't the power of the saint. Still, Diana didn't see herself this way. Inside, she was always wishy-washy, nervous about what other people thought, and a deeply jealous person. In present day, Sigurd came to inform Diana that Julius wanted to see her. Entering the room, she saw Scarlet was still unconscious and hadn't awakened yet. As Julius shot her a deadly glare, she figured he already knew that she had betrayed them. Julius mentioned that the high-ranking Palmian they captured told them that Diana and Dios leaked important information about the Dianan faction. Diana fully accepted it was her fault, especially for putting Scarlet in danger. She thought the prince was going to arrest her, but he chose not to, knowing it would only plunge things further into chaos. And if Scarlet were to learn something happened to Diana while she was sleeping, she would be aggrieved. He permitted Diana to go free for the rest of the pilgrimage, but he wanted to know why she betrayed them. Just before she could explain, a bright light suddenly blinded the room. The knights outside saw a pillar of light coming from the direction of the holy gem. There, Terraneza had used her powers to destroy it. At the same time, Nautica was witnessing while spying on them. Two of the Palmian inquisitors, Lord Avalon and Lord Baroque, informed Terraneza that they had returned from their mission. She commended them for their good work, and also thanked the members of the Eldrin Empire's Paladins of Immaculate Divinity for their cooperation. Baroque wondered if Michelin's negotiations failed since he wasn't here. Seeing that his mission went well, Evelyn told Baroque there was nothing to worry about. After all, Vanquish and Palestine have been feuding for years, so Vanquish was bound to accept their offer. Unfortunately, before Nautica could leave to inform the others, he was caught by Terraneza's spell. Afterwards, Julius received word about the Holy Gem, which had created a gap in the barrier, and a large number of monsters were now heading towards Snowwind. Through his clairvoyance, Leo told the prince there were several thousand monsters. Julius thought the non-herd monsters acting as a unit was unusual. Then, he ordered Leo to bring the Holy Order. He told Paragus and his men to split by district, to pass word along and gather all the citizens to the plaza. From there, they'd be guided out of town. Immediately after, Sigurd brought word that the Holy Empire of Eldrin and the Principality of Falconia had declared war on Palestine. Their armies were currently advancing toward the borders. He advised Julius to return to the capital at once. Julius then ordered Leo to have the garrison return with the saints' procession to the Dianan Cathedral at the capital. Diana noticed everyone was acting strangely. She didn't expect things to turn out like this. She couldn't make anyone smile like this. Believing her heart was wicked, she wondered why she even did this, despite loving Scarlet more than anyone else. Dios would come into the room after knocking out the guards at the door. Diana let him know she was done being a spy and refused to give any more information to the Palmians. Dios in turn reminded her of why she initially betrayed the Dianists. When Diana lost her powers, not even the sacred staff used by the previous saint could help, so she was considered useless and abandoned by the priestesses. As she was about to smash the staff, Dios stopped her by introducing himself. He asked if she wished to restore her powers, explaining that blessings represented the favor of the gods. He would then pull out a crystal and smash it, and it suddenly created the saint's barrier. He told her that goddess Palmia could help return her powers, and that with the crystal barrier, she could take her blessings back as though she never lost it. While Diana was scared and confused, he offered her power in exchange for 1 year's worth of confidential Dianan information. Desperate for everyone to see her worth, knowing that without the saint's blessing, the kingdom of Palestine would be attacked by monsters, Diana asked him to promise he wouldn't use that information to hurt others. Now, Dios told her her hard work would have been for nothing if she stopped. Regardless, Diana didn't want to betray those who cared about her the most. She wanted to live without shame, like Scarlet. And hearing this, Dios decided to get rid of Scarlet now. Diana would lunge towards him with a dagger, but he'd disarm and seize her hand. Suddenly, Scarlet's powers were released. The next second, she sent Dios flying through the wall. She felt so much better waking up this way. Meanwhile, Julius told Sigurd there was a good chance the Palmians were involved in all the chaos happening. If Vanquish took this chance to invade, they'd have to wave the white flag and feign surrender. A dragon rider then showed up before them, introducing himself as Jin, vice captain of the Vanquish Imperial Red Sky Dragoons, and then gave Julius a letter from Prince Alflame. Elsewhere, Knights of the Dianan clergy tied up Dios. They were ready to kill him, until Scarlet stopped them because she wanted to interrogate him. As soon as they were left alone, Dios cut the rope, trying to escape, but Scarlet used her powers to stop him in place and tied him back up. She wanted to know his true feelings, noting that when Diana's palanquin collapsed at the festival, he was about to save her. He had the same look as Leo did when he was worried about Scarlet. Dios then confessed that Diana was his half-sister. His mother was an elf, but they both had the same father. He hadn't told Diana yet, and only learned about her existence when he secretly went to visit his father. He was hoping to dish out a punch to the man who abandoned him and his mother, but there, he saw his half-sister smiling so innocently and thought she was the cutest. Her confidence, her personality, her compact little body. he fell in love at first sight. But not in a romantic way. However, his face showed he was in love with her, which was so wrong in so many ways. Wow, I can't believe they put a siscon in this show. Dios wanted to do whatever it took to restore Diana's smile. The reason he joined the Palmians was that he didn't want to see her sad about losing the power of her blessing. He hoped Terraneza was saying the truth about being able to restore it. But since Diana didn't care about her powers anymore, he was going to turn against Palmia too. To prove himself, he gave Scarlet internal information about the Palmians that only Inquisitors knew. However, she'd smash it out of instinct. A scrap of paper wasn't enough to make her believe him. She told him if he wanted to restore her trust in him and wished to continue protecting his sister, 100 words from his lying mouth would be worth less than simply opening his heart. Earlier, Scarlet told Diana she had sinned by aiding in this evil act. She asked her to apologize to everyone after all this was over and accept the appropriate punishment. Scarlet comforted Diana, telling her to do everything she could for now. She believed Diana was much stronger than Dios thought. With this clairvoyance, Leo detected that the monsters were still on the move. The knights were doing their best to quickly evacuate the citizens to the capital. By nighttime, Scarlet stood by a riverside, thinking about how monsters were invading, and 2 nations were declaring war. She was hoping to restore Diana's blessing as soon as possible, but it seems she had more important things to do right now. Suddenly, Prince Julius approached her. He claimed to have done enough work in the capital, allowing him to return. He then proposed playing a game of catch to lighten the mood. Scarlet offered to give him some head pats, and out of nowhere, ears sprouted on his head. Seeing this, she tricked him into turning around and knocked him out, causing Nanika to reveal himself. She already figured that Terraneza must have manipulated him with her charm power. When he woke up, they were already in a carriage heading to the castle. He warned Scarlet about the Palmians working with the neighboring realms, but she told him to be at ease because they were about to attend a strategy meeting to discuss the threats to Palestan. Terraneza, the Palmians, and the countries working with them were all deserving of her fists. The kingdom of Palestine was surrounded on all sides by other nations. The Northern Principality, Falconia, the Western Holy Empire, Eldran, the Eastern Empire, Vanquish, and the Southern Republic, Lindbergh. All were quite formidable, with superior territory and military to Palestine. In the past, they had always kept each other in check, but the moment the Holy Gem of the North was destroyed, Falconia and Eldran declared war on them. In addition, monsters from other lands came through the hole in the barrier to invade Palestine territory. According to Julius, there were about 50,000 monsters. Paragus doubted their entire military would be able to defeat them. Julius then mentioned that the monsters were making a beeline for the capital, as if something was drawing them there. Plus, the armies of Eldrin and Falconia were at their borders, though they hadn't shown any signs of invading yet. Scarlet speculated that they were waiting for Palestine to exhaust itself fighting monsters, so that they would give little resistance. Seeing the hopeless situation, the prince decided to begin the conference. However, he questioned why everyone was acting like they were at a funeral. He told them there was some good news, explaining that a particular faction had contacted him in secret. Julius would then welcome the crown prince of Vanquish Empire, Alflame, as the proposer of this alliance. Leo quickly objected, reminding Julius that Alflame was the one who incited Godwin and nearly destroyed their kingdom. Sigurd asked the prince to reconsider. Scarlet also stated that it would be hard for those who were present for those events to accept this. But Julius couldn't take their feelings into account, reasoning that this alliance was necessary. Alflame explained that the Vanquish Empire itself wasn't involved in this. He was simply offering help by himself. Before he could explain why, Scarlet put on her gloves and slammed his head into the ground. Having expected Alflame to ruin things, Jin said that he came here to serve as a negotiator. He then explained that the Vanquish Empire didn't have any hereditary succession. Rather, the strongest fighter in each generation would take the throne. There was always a violent battle for succession. Alflame boasted he wouldn't lose in any battle between individuals, but taking the throne came down to far more than a single fighter. It could even lead to a war. In other words, he was offering to help them so they would aid him in his battle for the vanquished throne. Still, Julius claimed the enemies were too great in number for him to make a difference. Suddenly, a soldier reported there were thousands of dragons in the sky above the capital. Alflame explained they were with him. These were his country's elite air force, the Red Sky Dragoons, and they could take out 50,000 monsters easily. Alflame told Julius the Dragoons had experienced battling terrifying monsters flooding in from the demon continent day and night. Julius then brought up he had a strategy to grant them victory with other nations, to avoid a war entirely. He had already sent a messenger to Lindbergh and the nation said they would remain observers in this affair. As for the nations that had declared war, he was hoping Alflame would have good intelligence. The vanquished prince assumed he knew of their detour to the north, but it was actually Jin who told Julius about it. Alflame told them they sighted the forces of Falconia in the forests of the north. Their numbers were small, and they seemed to be mixed with a band of elves and beastkin. Falconia had never shown interest in expanding its borders before, so Julius speculated their invasion was instigated by outsiders. If Falconia dropped out, then Eldrin would most likely reconsider their invasion as well. As for who would make negotiations with Falconia, that's why Dios was brought here. Nautica also offered to go, because his kinsfolk might be there. He was sure he could convince the beastkin to stand down, since they generally didn't like fighting. With that settled, Julius brought the conference to an end. Afterwards, Scarlet came across Dios and Nautica arguing about which route to take to the forest. Sigurd told her they'd been arguing since the conference ended. He and his men would also be meeting with the rest of the kingdom's knights, who went on ahead to prepare for the Eldrendian invasion. Scarlet believed that if they invaded, it could lead to a great deal of bloodshed. Captivated by her charm, Sigurd swore on their swords to protect the kingdom of Palestan and asked her to rest easy. However, she also swore on her fists to protect the kingdom. She then left the castle, ready to go monster hunting. Moments later, Scarlet arrived at the Red Sky Dragoon's camp with her dragon. As she introduced herself, the riders referred to her as the Infernal Bride, and assumed Rex was Alflame's present to her. As the vanquished prince showed up, she ordered Rex to fry him. This somehow made the riders approve of her even more. Scarlet was distraught, not knowing how to deal with these attitudes. She then joined Alflame and his men to hunt down the monsters. In her eyes, they looked very satisfying to punch. With one kick, she shattered their weapons, making them tremble with fear. Then, she would ask the monsters to respect the etiquette of a dance, and offered to show them how it's done. Once their fists met her palm, they were obligated to dance with her until their lives reached their end. Sadly for the beasts, they couldn't even last one song with her. Alflame met up with her, asking if she was enjoying this. But Scarlet wasn't, because the monsters could barely put up a fight. Most people who saw a monster for the first time would flinch at their unsightly appearance. However, in terms of personality, Scarlet claimed to have punched far uglier people. Some of Alflame's men then reported they ran into a boss monster that had taken one of them hostage. Of course, Scarlet was thrilled to proceed to the main dish. Upon confronting the pig-looking boss, she humbly thanked it for being born to sate her fists. Surprisingly, this monster could speak human language. He claimed to be an orc god now, all thanks to Terraneza. The orc boss brought out Mitch, the hostage he had captured, or so they thought. He claimed Mitch wasn't worthy of such a role, and that he would make an example out of him. Human women and children were an orc's best meal. They usually tore into them while they were alive, listening to their pleas for help. As the orc boss threatened to do the same to Scarlet, that's when she would decapitate him with her fists. She doubted he had actually died though. The boss then showed his head in the middle of his chest. He had the ability to move his head anywhere he wanted, so Scarlet started punching him all over, determined to keep punching until she won this game of wacky. The orc began to brag that his flesh could repel blades and absorb impacts. And in this moment, Rex would twist his head, causing him to spill the acid in his mouth on his comrades. After that, Scarlet's punches finally took effect. Although his stomach was padded with fat, she hit him repeatedly at point-blank range. While slowing the flow of time, she used minute twists of her torso to create a piston-like effect to deal hundreds of point-blank body punches at once. The result was the orc boss being cooked by his own acid. The riders thanked her for saving Mitch's life, but she claimed to have only done this to save the kingdom they all lived in. Hearing this, they wanted her to become their boss, but she told them to remain in Vanquish forever. Following that, Dios would send her a message with wind spirits, letting her know they couldn't negotiate with Falconia due to a serious issue. In their current situation, Nautica wondered how they'd get into the forest. Dios told him they would follow the path, explaining that the dragoons were acting as decoys for the monsters to make it easy on them. Dios assured him that Jin seemed like a good guy, but as soon as Jin got slashed in the face, he quickly turned it into an all-out huge melee. Now Dios and Nautica couldn't get into the forest to negotiate with Falconia. Scarlet then assured them that she'd settle it quickly. She flew over to Alflame, letting him know that she enjoyed her main dish, and she even had a little dessert. Flashing back to where she knocked out Baroque in one hit. Wait, didn't they set this guy up to be some fearsome inquisitor 2 episodes ago with the other guy? Why do all that just to almost off-screen him? Scarlet told the vanquished prince to remind his dragoons to stick to their diversion plan. He decided to handle it, but she doubted it was something he could do alone. Alflame dived in the middle of the monsters, using his flame magic to incinerate them in a huge explosion. With the path carved out, Nautica and Dios were able to rush into the forest. On their way, Nautica asked him if he really came here to negotiate and what he came to bargain with. Dios responded that he could probably work something out since he had royal elf blood. Seeing that Nautica was quite suspicious of him, Dios asked why he didn't question him at the castle, and Nautica answered he didn't want to upset Scarlet by doing so. He claimed she genuinely trusted the Holy Order, and she was the kindest person to those she gave her trust to. Although Dios broke that trust in the worst way possible, Scarlet decided to trust him again. Dios didn't understand why they didn't hate the people who betrayed them. For him, he hated his clan members, who saw him as a burden and drove him out of the village. Dios reminded Nautica that being too trusting could get him hurt. They suddenly drew blades at each other, but to actually block the arrows shot at them. Nautica could tell that the elves and beastkin attacking them were under Terranezza's control. If they didn't handle this carefully, they could ruin their hopes of a ceasefire. Suddenly, the enemies were put to sleep by a spell, and Dios was shocked to see it was done by the elves' chieftain. Nautica explained that they were the messengers who came to negotiate a ceasefire. The chieftain told him they weren't part of the army, but they were merely monitoring the monster's activities. Dios doubted he would save them without a reason. So, the chieftain said that he simply came to stop his manipulated brethren. He let them know that it was the Beastkin clans who declared war against Palestine, and so, Nautica and Dios would have to speak with them. Nautica still tried to talk to the chieftain, but the elf guard held his blade against him. Dios would then propose a trade with the chieftain, who happened to be his uncle. He offered to give his uncle the power of the wind spirits, which his mother had gifted him. In return, Dios asked him to use his authority to make the Falconian army stand down. While flying over the scorched battlefield, Scarlet found Alflame passed out on the ground. Just then, two monsters were about to finish him off, but she'd violently drop in on them, threatening to turn the rest into minced meat. She'd quickly plow through the remaining monsters, defeating all of them in a flash. Alflame was shocked to see that she was worried about him, but considering he risked his life, she felt it was only natural for her to save him. After healing him with her magic, she informed Alflame that nearly half of his dragoons were out with injuries, and some were in very poor condition. However, the healers were working hard to treat them, so there was no need for him to worry. He then teased about the way she was staring at him with passion, causing Scarlet to threaten to burn him into charcoal. Afterwards, Julius received word that the Falconian army was withdrawing from the border. For now, things had settled down. Scarlet reminded the prince that it was important to relax when he could. He'd suddenly embrace her warmly, and for a moment, they stared into each other's eyes. That's when Alflame would interrupt, informing them that he'd be returning to Vanquish with his dragoons. She was surprised that he came all this way to say goodbye, but the Vanquish prince then asked Scarlet to come with him. He claimed Palestine would soon go to war with Eldrin, and when that happens, it'd be difficult for him to save her. Scarlet appreciated his concern, but mentioned that she belonged to the ducal family of the Kingdom of Palestine. She had to carry out her duties to the best of her ability. But Alflame didn't see her as a flower meant to be housed and admired in worthless noble gatherings. To him, she was a battlefield blossom, blooming radiantly amid blood and chaos. His warrior's sensibility recoiled at the idea of her dying amongst those who failed to appreciate her. Prince Julius then told the Vanquished prince that it was he who failed to appreciate Scarlet. He stated she could bloom anywhere, and that was her nature. He wouldn't give her up to a man who had only fallen in love with her recently. Julius claimed to have 10 years worth of feelings. Alflame immediately took him as a rival in love and challenged him to a battle for Scarlet. But Jin would smack him, scolding him for picking a fight with another kingdom's prince. While Alflame was dragged off to his dragon, Jin apologized on his behalf. Julius mentioned that the king had given permission for the dragoons to cross their border, though he'd rather it not count as an airspace incursion each time. As the dragoons left, Alflame told Scarlet to stay alive because they would meet again. Later on, Leo informed Julius that the adventurers and remaining soldiers took out the rest of the monsters. Now Eldrin couldn't flank them with Falconia, and the kingdom's knights were lined up on the border, where the Eldrin army was holding their position. The prince felt if they hadn't withdrawn, then they likely couldn't be negotiated with. Scarlet suspected they were waiting for Terranezza to do something. Also, the divine instrument Terranezza used to destroy the holy gem was a tremendous threat. As they wondered where Palmia's priestess was, Dio showed up, stating that he knew where. However, Scarlet and Leo turned their attention to Nautica, praising him for negotiating the ceasefire, and Dios was left out. Dios then explained he got his information from the tree spirits of the Great Forest. The enemy was following the plan he was told when he was an Inquisitor, and he revealed that Terranezza's retinue was seen heading west towards Sahaskila. Wow, look at that, guys. It's a desert land. Hearing this, Julius confirmed that she was after the Western Holy Gem. If the gem were destroyed, more monsters would troop in, and Eldrin would begin their invasion. Julius felt they still had time, reasoning that the power used to destroy a holy gem couldn't be used multiple times in quick succession. A divine instrument could only be wielded by someone with the magic power of a god. So, Dios reasoned that Terranezza's wouldn't be fully recharged for another 3 days. Before then, they needed to find her, and according to Scarlet, beat her into tiny little pieces. Though her brother wasn't in support, Julius mentioned that he had arranged a ride, so they could reach Sahaskila in a day. Aside from everyone here, he added that Diana and the members of the Holy Order would also be participating in the plan. Dios was a bit skeptical about Diana getting in on this. They went to where Diana had volunteered to help some of the injured, and called her to speak for a moment. When they got outside, they informed her of the plan to go to Sahaskila. Scarlet showed her the divine instrument she had received from Cronoa, explaining that she could use it to take back Diana's blessing from Terranezza. Hearing this, Diana was determined to go, so Dios couldn't stop her, with Leo saying he would protect Diana as well. She went red and fell to the ground. Afterwards, Julius told Scarlet that some people skilled in barrier magic were helping to project a barrier at the location of the lost northern gem. The monster's advance had stopped, Falconia had agreed to a ceasefire, and the Eldrin army seemed shaken. Scarlet suddenly stopped him and asked what he meant when he said he had 10 years worth of feelings for her. The prince froze in silence for a few moments, then answered apple pie, asking if she wanted to try apple pie with vanilla and ice cream. As he offered to have some with her once this was all over, she felt this was something one would say when someone was about to die. Guys, he's triggering a death flag. Meanwhile, Terranezza was frustrated that her plans weren't working. Palmyra would appear before her, saying, "The leading lady of a story must always wear an innocent and charming smile to bring joy to those around her," and also telling Terranezza that she didn't do exactly as she said. The goddess explained that Terranezza had the monsters ignore the little villages and towns of Palestine to march straight for the capital, leading to a miserable result. She was supposed to destroy everything, but Terranezza argued her wish was to become queen and take the kingdom for herself. If she killed everyone, the country would fall immediately after. The goddess then warned her that Scarlet and the others would be coming in a day. Terranezza mentioned that she could easily recharge the divine instrument in a day's time and fulfill the goddess's wish of crushing those with the blessings of Cronoa. Our heroes had no idea Nautica was still under Terranezza's charm, and she made him cast a spell on Prince Julius. In the early hours of the morning, the members of the Holy Order set out on the pilgrimage, riding on griffins. Diana felt sad, noting that on the last pilgrimage, people came out to greet them, but they had all been evacuated. If they did what they came to do and restored peace, the town would surely regain its life. Dios then told her she didn't have to come if she was going to chicken out. However, she wasn't scared at all. Even without the saint's power, Diana was determined to do the best she could. Soon after, they arrived at the location of the holy gem. Sniffing the air out, Nautica could smell Terranezza and a large number of people down the stairs. Since he and Dios had the best senses of the group, he decided they would scout ahead, while the rest would stay behind and tell them where to go. While everyone entered, Rex tried to force his way in, but the entrance was too small for him, so Scarlet asked her dragon to remain outside with the griffins. She'd suddenly hear a young boyish voice telling her to take care, but she thought it was her imagination. As they ventured deeper into the cave, Nautica stopped them, sensing something rigged in the floors and walls ahead. However, Scarlet walked into the trap and quickly shattered the arrows that shot out of the wall. After that, she went ahead, activating all the traps, shattering the boulders, beating up venomous snakes, and breaking logs. Palmia's followers sensed the Palestinians had arrived, and they believed their deadly traps worked on them. However, they were shocked seeing the Palestinians in front of them completely uninjured. Scarlet would thank them for the warm-up equipment they provided. They felt insulted by her words and rushed to attack, but she'd easily take them down, leaving the rest frightened. Scarlet didn't appreciate a delicate lady like herself being called a devil, so she decided to vent her sorrows through her fists. Before she could get close to them, Michelin suddenly stopped her on the spot. Her body felt heavy because of a spell. Dios warned that the old man was a tricky opponent. Seeing their reinforcements, Julius hoped these were all the Palmians had. But just to be sure, he had Leo scan the area with his clairvoyance. Leo found Terranezza at the location of the Holy Gem, which confirmed that these were all their forces. But the minute he saw her, an extraordinary outpouring of magic fried his eye. It was probably due to her divine instrument. Michelin and the other followers then noticed the presence of Diana. The old man decided to destroy the false idol in his shrine to please goddess Palmia. However, Paragus vowed in the name of the Holy Order that he and his knights wouldn't let them lay a hand on her. The fight began, and as Michelin tried to cast a spell, Dios would stop him. Michelin's ability to weaken someone else's physical abilities was a tricky one. Dios would have to take the staff from him, but after getting knocked back, he realized it wouldn't be easy. Julius told Scarlet they should leave this fight to Leo and the others, so they could go ahead to stop the Holy Gem's destruction. However, Michelin threatened that they wouldn't be able to get past him without expending their blessing's power. He amplified the spell in his staff, weakening all the soldiers. Scarlet struggled to move her body, so she tried casting a spell, but the old man expected that and mocked her. However, she was only thinking about how best to hold back. She didn't want to kill an old man. Scarlet would punch the air in her hands, sending a bullet of wind to knock Michelin out. It wasn't something that could be defended against with magic, because it was simply air pressure. She used the fist to compress the wind she summoned magically, and sent it to knock him out. Apparently, her tutor taught her how to do it when she was a child. The guys couldn't believe how inhuman she was. Scarlet then told everyone that she'd be leaving everything else in their hands, and she assured Diana that she'd get her blessing back from Terranezza. As both sides broke out in a fight, Scarlet went on ahead with Prince Julius. On their way, they bumped into Avalon, standing before them, yet he seemed nearly undetectable. She thought it might be the power of another Palmian magic item. She was quite intrigued, but just saw him as another meat sack. However, Julius told her to go ahead while he handled this, advising her not to lose sight of her goal. She looked a bit angry, but he cheered her up, letting her know he regretted that he wouldn't be able to see her beat up Terranezza. Scarlet used her magic to dash quickly past Avalon, who didn't seem bothered. Avalon claimed a woman who was only strong by mortal standards wouldn't pose any challenge to Terranezza. More importantly, he could tell that he and Julius were the same kind of person. Avalon would then summon a large magic sword, and seeing it, Julius figured this was why the Inquisitor was so undetectable. Avalon then claimed that what they had in common was the confidence that they were the most beautiful men in the world. He acknowledged Julius's noble birth, exquisite features, and superlative talents. But Avalon believed himself to be the only beautiful man the world needed. Therefore, he'd have to kill the prince. Julius had no interest whatsoever in this title, but it'd be an amusing sight for him to bring an overconfident fool to his knees. Meanwhile, Scarlet finally caught up to Terranezza, letting her know it was time to end all this. And Terranezza gave a typical response, saying, "Kneel before me, you filthy villainess." Dashing forward, Scarlet landed a punch on her face, but Terranezza took no damage. Scarlet was relieved she couldn't finish it with a single hit. Now, she could pay off the massive debts her fists had accrued. Terranezza showed that she had charged enough power in her divine instrument to destroy the Holy Gem. All she needed to do now was hold it up and summon Palmia's power, plunging Palestine into peril once more. Scarlet was ready to find out whether Terranezza's lance or her fists were faster. Using her acceleration skill, she appeared in Terranezza's face in a flash. Then she quickly slowed down time before Terranezza could use her barrier. She grabbed Terranezza's hair from behind and disarmed her as the flow of time returned to normal. Before she would beat her up, she'd take back Diana's blessing first, with the instrument Cronoa had given her. Diana would heal the injured as the fight to protect her went on, but at this rate, they would eventually give out. Michelin managed to cast a spell, weakening all the soldiers of the Holy Order. At that moment, Diana's hand began glowing with magic. She unleashed her blessing, casting a protective barrier to protect her people. She would heal everyone and swear to never let anyone else get hurt again. During Julius and Avalon's fight, the prince cast a fireball, redirecting it at the ceiling to bury his opponent in rubble. Avalon admitted that Julius's technique was beautiful, but claimed the prince's narrow sword could only deflect his for so long. However, Julius was able to perfectly time his deflection and stab the Inquisitor. The amount of blood loss would keep Avalon down for a while. Julius had heard he was the top of the inquisitorial hierarchy, so he asked why Avalon held back. The Inquisitor responded that Julius was a valuable pawn, which was why he couldn't hurt him. His sword could slice through reality to link two places together. Avalon explained that beyond the tear in the space he created was the temple where the mistress of the blessing of charm, Lady Terranezza, awaited. However, he didn't think Julius could resist the power of charm so well. Nanika had been used to cast a spell that would lower Julius's resistance in advance, and Julius couldn't resist any longer, falling under Terranezza's charm. At the same time, Scarlet smashed Terranezza's face into the ground, After confirming that Diana's blessing had returned, Terraneza accused her of doing awful things, claiming she was just trying to be happy. It was said that a maiden's tears were more precious than pearls, but Terraneza's tears were as worthless to Scarlet as the pebbles on the roadside. Of course, Terraneza was only putting up an act. Suddenly, feathers slowly filled the air as Julius showed up, shooting a fireball at Scarlet. Scarlet was stunned, unable to comprehend why Julius was acting this way, but she soon realized it was all because of Terraneza's charm. Terraneza was elated, saying, "Looks like your precious Prince Julius prefers me." And he responded, "Yes. I never tire of watching an impudent fool like you take the stupidest actions possible." Man, she did not like this method of flirting. Terraneza asked the prince to kill Scarlet while she'd store up power in her divine instrument again. And so, Julius raised his blade against her. However, she didn't hesitate to send the prince flying through pillars. Terraneza made the mistake of thinking Scarlet would hold back against him. Since this was all for the greater good, Scarlet had no issues beating up Prince Julius. As she broke his wrist, he would instantly heal it. Seeing that she had the advantage in close combat, Julius charged up a spell, and he predicted that she'd close the gap immediately, so he blocked her attack while canceling out the spell. Meanwhile, Terraneza didn't understand how Scarlet could still attack Julius. She wanted her in greater despair, calling her heartless for punching the kingdom's prince. But Scarlet claimed this was proof of true love, the fists of love that wouldn't stop until Prince Julius was back in his right mind, back in her world. Terraneza hated people who looked down on her because they were life's winners and always enjoying themselves. When they'd bump into her, causing her books to fall, they'd simply apologize and carry on with their day. But Terraneza wanted to see them in despair and their faces in agony. Man, that's a little much. They didn't bully her or anything. Terraneza just sounds like some antisocial weirdo. Scarlet then smashed Julius's head to the ground, letting him know that it was unlike him to fall into the enemy's trap. She asked if he preferred women like Terraneza, and he teased her for being jealous. He felt it was rather charming to see her act like a lady her age for once. Terraneza got sick of their flirting. She'd point her lance against Julius's neck, causing Scarlet to become scared. And seeing that Scarlet's blessing was running low, she threatened to kill Julius if she didn't surrender. Scarlet would immediately admit defeat, standing with her hands behind her head. Terraneza then activated a spell to steal Scarlet's blessing, and she commanded the prince to restrain her. However, Scarlet wasn't expecting to be restrained in such an inappropriate manner. It seemed more intimate. Terraneza noticed her charm's effect was waning, all thanks to Julius's blessing, known as Heroic Tail. Heroic Tail was a special blessing created by Origin, the creator, the god above all others. It allowed the wielder to unleash unlimited power when the person they loved was in danger. Hearing this, Scarlet looked at Julius, but he told her, "No, I don't feel that way about you whatsoever." Although he denied it so earnestly, she asked why his blessing was going into effect. She was annoyed by the way he toyed with her feelings with his suggestive acts. Then, she told the prince that she didn't have those feelings for him either. Terraneza mocked her for being so cold and saying such an awful thing to the person who threw himself on her to protect her from Godwin's shot. She also mentioned that Heroic Tail couldn't activate unless the love was mutual. Scarlet thought back to when Julius protected her, wondering if that was all the effect of the Heroic Tail. Terraneza claimed it was always a one-sided love, calling Scarlet a villainess and letting her know she could never become a true leading lady. Scarlet would then ask the prince if he could overcome all dangers and save her if his blessing was fully activated, even under the influence of the charm blessing. As Julius confirmed it, she felt relieved. Blushing hard, she asked the prince to save her and kissed him. At that moment, Heroic Tail activated fully, breaking him out of Terraneza's charm blessing. The prince was rather worried when Scarlet said she didn't feel the same way about him. She was annoyed by his remark, asking if he knew how much she struggled to work up the courage to say that. He then told her to leave the rest to him. Terraneza came down to face them, claiming the prince's Heroic Tail wouldn't stand a chance against her divine vessel. She blasted him with her power, but it was all useless against his blessing. Scarlet would dash in from the side and managed to graze Terraneza's cheek. Full of frustration and anger, Terraneza wondered why things wouldn't go her way. She was the leading lady and believed anyone who didn't love her had to die. Suddenly, Goddess Palmia showed herself, letting Terraneza know she'd always love her. She merged Terraneza's body with the divine vessel, turning her into a mindless puppet. Terraneza would then unleash a powerful attack on them, but luckily, Julius's blessing was able to nullify it. Then, he shot back the same spell at her, while Scarlet landed multiple punches in close range. But Terraneza was healing as quickly as she was injured. However, a human vessel couldn't withstand the power of a god for so long, so Terraneza would die within minutes. Julius suggested waiting for her to self-destruct, but Scarlet wouldn't let it end this way. Recalling all the evil things Terraneza had done, Scarlet mentioned that she has yet to deal the blow that would make her really feel better. The prince decided to protect her with his blessing and promised to make sure it would hold out until she could deliver that punch. Scarlet wouldn't thank him. Instead, she expected him to spend the rest of his life repaying her for gifting him her maiden lips. As Scarlet closed in on Terraneza, she used her blessing to stop time, and finally landed the blow that would put all regrets to rest. A punch so powerful, it sent Terraneza flying into the stars. And now, Scarlet felt so much better. After that, Saint Diana used her blessing to restore the holy gem. By nighttime, Scarlet caught Dios trying to leave without saying goodbye. She'd heard from Julius that he'd become an intelligence agent for Palestine. Dios explained that if he didn't agree, he would be sentenced to 100 years of hard labor in the boonies with the other inquisitors. It was basically a plea bargain. Diana would then approach Dios, telling him that she wanted to talk to him. She thanked him for saving her in the western ruins. In the past, she only did her duty as a saint because she was told to, and she thought it was the only thing she was good for. But she said things would be different now. Diana wanted to protect the people of this country of her own will, for the sake of the kingdom's future. She wanted to carry out her mission with her divinely granted gift, risking her life to fight, as they all did. Dios saw that his sister was as strong as Scarlet said. He teased her for acting all grown up, and quickly mentioned that he told everyone she only betrayed them because he manipulated her, even though in truth it was due to her own weakness. After teasing her about her taste in bread, he'd leap away, asking Scarlet to go on a date with him the next time they'd meet. But Diana would refuse on her behalf. He then bid them farewell. The following day, Scarlet and Leo were returning to the capital. If things went as planned, they'd be able to make it in time for Julius's tea party. With Terraneza off the board, the Eldrin army withdrew immediately, and things were finally resolved. Julius had used the fact that he was also controlled by Terraneza's charms as testimony to condemn Sargon and the other Palmians. Because of that, the Palmians saw clearly that Diana was not a false saint, and began to insist that they had been brainwashed by the Saint of Palmia, and as a result, the Palmian religion was dissolved. Scarlet asked Leo if he knew about Julius's blessing, and although Leo knew the prince had a blessing, Julius refused to speak of something so embarrassing publicly, and kept it strictly to himself. While thinking about how much of this the prince had planned, Scarlet's expression became grim as she realized he had beaten her. She figured he arranged a situation where she was in danger and had to rely on his power, making her confess her feelings and kiss him. In other words, to unlock his hidden powers, he let himself be charmed. Scarlet then told her brother that she had business to take care of, so she'd go on ahead of him with Rex. As she arrived at the tea party, Julius would serve her a plate of apple pie and ice cream. But while being all smiles, she told him the dish was lacking a dash of mortal peril. While she got ready to punch him, he told her to be sure to tilt her head a bit when kissing someone, to not bump noses, and not to dive in too quickly to avoid having their teeth clack together. He hoped she'd take these into account the next time they did it. Scarlet would then ask for one final thing, to send the insensitive black-hearted prince flying. And just before Leo could stop her, Scarlet's fist was already on its way to meet Julius's face. What an ending, huh? I enjoyed my time watching this, but it was just okay. Probably one of the better shoujo series this season, but nothing really crazy. I feel like the first 3 episodes were pretty solid and set up an interesting premise, but after that, every episode was about the female lead punching someone. I personally never felt the stakes were high or real tension was ever felt. And what was with Julius getting this OP blessing at the end? Like, there's no payoff in that. Animation looked decent at least, but nothing mind-blowing. What do you guys think? Subscribe for more content, but for now, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.